decide to step up to this kind of power, this kind of challenge, this kind of flying, crashing feeling, when you decide to get serious, there's only one place to come. The games of Super Nintendo. No one else creates this kind of experience, because no one else creates these kinds of games. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
You're listening to M.T.V.B. Podcast. Movies, TV, video and board games. This show may contain swearing.
Hello, welcome to a brand new episode of the M.T.V.B. podcast, the podcast that talks about my four favourite subjects, that's movies,
TV,
video games,
and board games. I'm your host, Anthony, as well as most people know me as the Ant-Man, and welcome. This week's episode, once again, we are continuing that series where we talk about our favourite games from very specific consoles. This episode is going to be about the Super Nintendo, or the SNES to some people, and I'm joined around the table by the guys that love to talk about SNES, Super Nintendo games. Obviously, the man with no introduction. He's got two lists. He is two list H. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Anthony. How are you?
All good, sir. Thank you for coming back once again, sir.
My pleasure. Always.
And always, the man, the myth, the legend, the games master himself, all the way from Board Stupid Podcast, Wayne from Board Stupid. How are you, sir?
I am very well. It's SNES time, baby.
SNES time. Had to have you back. Obviously, the amount of effort, the facts you brought out for that, the NES episode, I had to have you back for it. Hopefully you've got it for this episode as well.
It was an absolute pleasure, mate. Yeah, I love nerding out about this stuff, so I'm more than happy to do some digging for you on these shows.
It was a humbling experience.
Don't
Tell
be
me about
humbled, mate.
I was like, I only put like a couple in, but this guy's like an encyclopedia. Jesus
Christ. Lines
Christ.
on some cards, and this guy was just coming out with like biblical lengths of knowledge. I'm like, I'm going home between my
I'm so sorry. I'm giving myself a lot of rope to hang myself with.
So yeah, obviously, Wayne, you're from Board Stupid. Please tell everyone about your podcast. Give us a little plug for that, please.
Absolutely. We are Board Stupid, the podcast that loves talking all things tabletop board games. And you can find us wherever you can find your favourite podcast. Just look for Board Stupid, spelled B-O-A-R-D. Please check out our YouTube channel, which has all of our industry interviews and industry content, as well as game reviews and Game of the Month recommendations. And there's going to be a whole heap on there in future, so stay tuned.
Nice. You've got that down to a T now, sir, I have to say.
I appreciate you.
So guys, Super Nintendo, SNES, whatever you want to call it, top 5 games for this console. How was the list for your top 5s?
Oh, this was brutal, this one, mate.
Was it really?
This one was real hard. Yeah, my shortlist was like 10 games long at least, maybe even 15. And they're all great. And like, so my honourable mentions list is as long as my arm.
Nice.
So I've got a few things to say about those. The SNES as well is an interesting console. Its development. And so it's fascinating looking into that a little bit more. But yeah, this was a tough one because I've got, the NES I had some, great memories of. I was very young. The SNES are a little bit older, so those memories are a bit stronger in my mind, so it's a little bit more solid in terms of my feelings when I think back on it. So this was a tough list, mate, and I'm very fond of the console and the experiences it brought me.
Nice. Looking forward to that top 5. How do you follow that? But you're the man with two lists. Let's tell us what the two lists are.
We have the main list, which is my personal legends. So these are the games that I will always go to time and time again. It's the standard sort of list. And then I've got what I refer to as the 2 a.m. button mashers.
Nice.
So these are the ones that are still great games in their own right, but they're the ones that I would, if I was up at said time, I'd just stick on and no brain out to, and probably complete in one sitting. So yeah, legends and button mashers.
Nice. I love how every list has a title. Like, it's not just a list, it's a titled list. I love it, sir. There's so much detail added to it. It's brilliant.
You've kind of bolstered my own legend, and I have to live up to it.
You started it, sir, with the two list thing.
I know. We want more.
We want more. The pounds
mate.
more.
More double list action.
It's it, mate. So before the questions, let's have a little history with the console with you guys. Was it, again, something you knew was coming, you saved up for, or got for Christmas or something? Let's have a little background with it first.
Absolutely. So I think I had a little chat with my brother today on the old Messenger, and we reckon we got it as a Christmas present around 95.
Okay.
So 94, 95, I want to say, which would have been a couple of years after it was launched in Europe, which is 92.
Okay.
So, and like all of these consoles, there's no freaking way we were getting that on launch year. Because, I think that was priced at £150 on launch year, which is $340-ish today.
Wow.
So, and there was no... Yeah, with inflation.
Seems like nothing, though, doesn't it, now, doesn't it?
£340. Well, £340 for a launch console. Not bad. I think the PS5 launched at like 500.
This is the way you say it was $149. It's like that's a tablet now. That's
seems like nothing.
Phones are more expensive than that now.
I mean, with inflation, it's like I said, it's the equivalent of about £330.
Yeah, sure.
Which is about what you'd expect. But yeah, there was no way on earth we were getting it then. So we got it probably during a price cut, probably with a bundled in couple of games, which I very much remember playing a lot of. So, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And yeah, I remember very fondly playing the hell out of it with my brother, playing very specific games, which may appear on my list later. So I can't go into too much detail.
Nice, yeah.
But we had a lot of fun, and we played the hell out of it, mate.
Nice.
Yeah, got it with 2 controllers and smashed it to pieces. It was brilliant. Yeah.
So I think I, again, was very, very lucky, and this was a Christmas 92 gift.
Okay.
Oh, this was a launch year gift, Howard.
Yeah, I know.
Lucky boy.
I know.
Rich man Howard.
Yeah, I do recall memories of absolutely badgering the hell out of my parents for this one. And yeah, what a lucky boy. Open up this very, very big present on Christmas Day, and there it was. Yeah, the SNES. Well, the previous list, so Wayne mentioned that the SNES is more his console. The NES was probably mine. But when this delivered the then revolutionary standard of graphics, yeah, it was mind-blowing, and I wanted more. You'll find out why.
We'll find out why, yeah.
You'll find out why.
Nice.
I mean, the SNES, anybody I think of a reasonable middle age now will always contest that the SNES changed their lives. For home gaming experience.
Yeah.
And,
Because this was like the 16-bit now, isn't it? This is the upgrade from
16 bits,
which was double?
Yeah.
Double the NES or something?
Yeah, it went
That's
8,
right.
16 now. So
Does anyone know what the bit war was? Like, oh, mine's got 16 bits. Mine's got... What were bits?
It was essentially just a measure of processing power.
Right, okay.
I mean, it's not quite the same, because you think about processing power as like the CPU, right? And the CPU of the Super NES is like 4 megahertz. There's actually nothing to think about it today. So it's more about, I suppose, just, internal capacity for running games, like the size of your chipset. So 8 bits was absolutely tiny. 16 bits being double that was amazing. I mean, there was a massive thing at the time where Sega was really pushing the fact that they were a 16-bit console. Right? It even says on the Mega Drive, 16-bit. Right, like they made a big
well, there's
deal
like
out of it.
blast processing or something.
Something like that. But
Yeah.
it's like on the console, on every Mega Drive, it's on emblazoned in white letters on the front of it. 16-bit. And like it's something to be proud of. Nintendo, for ages, really held out of releasing the SNES because they were like, no, 8 bits is enough because it's about the games.
Yeah.
They didn't really care too much about competing and throwing out a next-gen console until they started getting pasted in the console war. And then they kind of were
there was
pushed
a
to
massive
do it.
gap, wasn't there, between console launches? Like
There
Mega Drive was 89 and this was 92, you said?
88 and then 1990.
88.
So it was
Fucking hell.
2-year gap before they released it in Japan, 4 years for the US, for the
UK.
for UK and Europe. And then there was, I think, a 2 or 3 year gap between the US releases, and that's where Sega really made a foothold in the United States, and with all their marketing, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, processing power, and Sega really pushed that as a thing, and Nintendo weren't really that fussed about it until they were forced into it.
See, this is what I love having
I know, it's great. I always find this amazing. I think we've talked about this on previous podcasts with different sort of mediums, but the gap in years between releases of consoles and games. I mean, you say like a 2 to 3 year gap. It seems unthinkable now, where across continents and time zones that there is a multi-release, all at exactly the same time of any console, any game,
It's wild, isn't it, to think about?
It is, yeah.
Because Xbox and PlayStation are literally weeks apart now. It's the same month, but literally like 2, maybe 3 weeks difference now. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's a blink of an eye, really, when you think about the years. But I think I mentioned this in the last podcast with films. You know, like a year's release between films in certain territories. You know? Yeah, it's just incredible, really.
To the point where there was magazine wars at the time, right? They released it in Japan, obviously the Super NES, 2 years before it was released in other markets, where there was like unofficial magazines that were reporting on the Japanese release, and Nintendo of America kept denying there would ever be an American release date. So, and then there was other rumours in other magazines saying, oh, actually it's a 32-bit machine, or actually it's actually going to be an add-on to the NES, right? And they were making all of these rumours up to make people, you know, buy their magazine. Because there was a console in Japan, but it wasn't like the internet era. People didn't know.
Magazines were the internet, weren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just because there was a console launch in Japan, the average person in the US or the UK wouldn't have a freaking clue about if that ever existed, unless they got one of these specialist magazines. So it caused a whole sort of internal magazine war as well, which is interesting.
Oh, I miss those days. The magazine war.
Nintendo Power, mate.
The most terrible photos as well. It's just like, you could just about make it out to be and everything.
Nintendo Power, and then there was like a bunch of unofficial ones as well. It was great.
Oh, they were like scanned Polaroid pictures, weren't they?
That's right, yeah.
It was that bad.
And I remember you had to send in your high score and you'd take a photo and the flash would reflect off the telly. So it's like good.
Incredible, mate.
You sort of touched on it just now, Wayne, about obviously the console war, Sega versus Nintendo. Now, Super Nintendo actually censored a few of their games, didn't they?
A lot.
Or a lot, should I say, yeah. And obviously the Mega Drive was added as the cooler one. Did the censored games ever bother you, or did you own any? Like Mortal Kombat, for example, was one. Robocop vs Terminator is another one. Did you guys not bother about that and weren't too fussed about it at all? Or?
I don't think it was really a thing that I thought about it at the time. I wasn't really of the mind of, this seems like a video nasty. This is something I need to go for. Or I wasn't playing those types of games. Moving on from the NES, I mean, from my previous list, I think I said to you guys, I was playing some pretty out there games that wasn't of the norm.
Yeah.
With the SNES, I went totally Route 1. So anything that was popular, any brand, any kind of license, I was on it. So yeah, anything that was considered a little bit left field with its content, it never really hit my radar.
I was still very young, so I don't think it really mattered to me too much. And like I said, I was typically controlled about what I could buy via the Argos catalogue, right? Whatever was available there, right? Okay.
Argos or Index.
If it was in there and it was available,
If
it was in there, maybe I could get that for Christmas. So I'd circle some stuff and I'd read something in Nintendo Power, and 11-year-old me is like, oh, that looks good. So I don't think the censoring had any impact on me personally. As a wider industry thing, it had a big impact. The Mega Drive version of Mortal Kombat outsold the Super NES one by 3-1.
Wow, really?
Literally 3 times as much, just because it was uncensored, and it was only uncensored because it had a cheat code that you could do to unlock the uncensoring. So that was the whole thing. But the console war was wild, right? Do you mind if we segue into it a little bit?
Please.
So there was a few things that were a little bit of a background to it. The reason it was such a tight war was because Sega sacked their old CEO and employed a guy called Tom, Kalinske. And he apparently was an absolute marketing beast. He slashed the price of the console to like $149 or whatever. And at the time, the SNES was going to debut at $199. So he basically sold it at a loss in order to get the game sold and to get it into people's homes. He was really driving that edgy marketing and all of that sort of stuff. And that was what really fired up the war. And you're talking about this whole, the censorship thing?
Yeah.
There was a point where, because of the bloody games of Mortal Kombat and stuff, the US senators, the Congress,
yes,
they created a hearing about that, about selling violent games to children. Right? So, and because of the console war, the ESRB was formed. right? So now the ratings board for video games.
Yeah.
So because of the console war between Sega and Nintendo and the fight about targeting violent games to children and Mortal Kombat, blah blah blah, video games from that point onwards had to have ratings on them. So it had a whole lasting impact. And because of that, Nintendo decided they didn't need to censor their games anymore. So everything before the ESRB introduction was censored by Nintendo of America, and everything after that isn't.
Okay.
So, a little bit of a segue.
So that would make sense then, really, as to why they weren't bothered about the censorship.
Exactly. So, but before the ESRB, Nintendo of America held it like an iron grip. They would censor everything. And in fact, every single game would go through Nintendo of America. They'd rate everything on like a 40-point scale.
Yeah.
And then they would allocate appropriate marketing resources. If they thought the game was going to be really good, they put more marketing behind it because it was like a 40 out of 40 internally. And if it wasn't, then they wouldn't. There's a whole bunch of stuff and context around that whole console war and what it led to. But the funny and interesting thing for me is it led to literal legislation change. So it's crazy.
It is crazy. And then in the end, they still uncensored their stuff in the end. Like Mortal Kombat 2 came out, and what's the other one that came out?
Which I imagine was post the ESRB then. So post the
must have been,
the standards, entertainment standards.
Oh, yeah, Doom,
board.
That was it. Doom came on it as well. So again, didn't need to censor that. It's crazy.
America. It's like when Dungeons and Dragons came out, and that they were trying to make the connection between Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal music and Satanist cultism.
There's always
it's the devil's game.
Yes, mate. There's always
lock up your children.
Yes, mate. There's always a shit parent that's there to blame some other form of media for their
Which
terrible
they
children.
touch up on that on Stranger Things 4, didn't they?
They do.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Hellfire Club's the devil.
Yeah, because it was that era, and even with one of my passions, the comic books, with the Comics Code Authority, there's always a precedent for this thing, and it's always something very, very mild.
It's crazy, mate. Yeah, it's always something super mild.
Yeah.
It also basically caused an internal policy change as well. So, during the NES era, Nintendo had this kind of exclusive control over their cartridges.
Right.
Like, they were the sole manufacturer and seller of cartridges to their to third-party platforms to then make their games on. And, games or third-party companies had to submit to Nintendo in advance and promise that they wouldn't release the game on any other console and blah, blah, blah. They ruled with an iron fist. Because of Sega and because of that competition, they completely relaxed that in the SNES era, and they had a completely different approach. They didn't have any of that. So literally, because of the console wars, it opened up Nintendo's business practices as well.
So it's all benefits them, really, at the end of the day, wasn't it?
Competition made benefit, mate. So
crazy.
Yeah. Wild.
Well, I guess if one company's going to do it, at least Nintendo did it.
yeah. But that's insanity that censorship opened up the floodgate.
Yes, mate. It's great, isn't it? Yeah. Amazing, really. So there's a whole bunch of stuff behind that. And the console war was a fascinating time, man. It was aggressive. Real aggressive.
Big time, yeah.
Sega pulled no punches. They did campaigns where they would take 2 arcade machines around the country, right? And it's like a giant press thing, inviting loads of press with like Sonic in one machine and Super Mario World in another machine. And they'd get kids to play them and they'd interview them straight afterwards and say which one was the best. And like 8 times out of 10, they say Sonic. And every time, and they use that in their advertising, saying Mario is fat and slow and old, whereas Sonic is fast and cool.
Of course, they're going to use all the good bits,
right?
They?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and they use all these kids' phrases. I mean, that is aggressive marketing, mate.
Real aggressive. Pizza pasta.
Yeah, pizza pasta. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
from Punch Out.
That's it.
Yeah. So it's wild, man. Yeah, they went in. Sega went in hard, and it was Tom Kalinske, mate, who went in and did all of that.
He was the Sega of America, wasn't he? Or something?
Yeah, Sega CEO, Sega of America, and he smashed it.
Nice. Just want to go into the controller for the console. Obviously, we had 2 buttons for the NES, 3 for Mega Drive. This puppy has 6. Was this ever a game changer for you guys when you first played it? I mean, for certain games, for me, hell yes. This was one of the be-all, end-all controllers of all time. How was it for you guys?
Go on, Howard.
We're currently staring at each other, loving
Which one goes first? Which one?
I talked for like 10 minutes on fucking policy. You go.
I was interested in that. So yeah, I think so. Yeah, on reflection. So growing up with the 2 main buttons, you now have 4 coloured buttons. and 2 sort of central main control buttons, and obviously the directional pad. So yeah, I think so. I think the colour, a minimal colour scheme that it had, but it was a game changer. Because I mean, let's keep it basic. It basically doubled the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And more options for the functions in the games as well, because you had extra buttons now. It wasn't just 2 buttons to run and jump or whatever. Now you could do spins or kicks or high kicks or whatever.
So in one of my examples, it will open up the world of combo moves and things like that. And it was.
See what you did there, sir.
Definitely, it was something that it did. It changed everything, I think, and it paved the way forward for the design of a controller.
Because other companies went
they
from
all followed suit. Yeah.
Shoulder bumps to and PlayStation had 4 of them.
So when you look at the PlayStation controller, which is now iconic, and I think whenever people make emulators or you see something on the internet, and they always use the PlayStation sort of format, but it was all born from this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
the Super Nintendo controller is the progenitor for every single modern video game controller. Every single modern video game controller has the 4-button diamond layout.
Yep.
They're all the same. The Xbox, the PS5, all of them. The Steam Deck, they're all in this diamond configuration. And that was an American ergonomist who designed that. I can't remember his name now. But he designed this whole approach with the L bumper buttons as well. And this, it's a phenomenally influential controller. I mean, when you think about it, every single one since then. And this design is, 1992? It's real old. It's 30-some plus years old.
31 years old.
31-year-old design, mate. And it's still exactly the same, pretty much. Give, take some analog sticks instead of a D-pad.
Instead of a D-pad, yeah.
But other than that, the diamond approach to the button layout is exactly the same in modern design with bumper pads with your fingers. It's a phenomenally foresighted, forethinking piece of ergonomic design, really. Interesting thing about the controller as well, the North American version doesn't have the 4 colours. It's just shades of purple.
Yes, that's right.
Yes,
yes,
it's just 2 shades of purple. And also, in the American version, it has, I think it's the A and B are convex and the X and Y are concave. Yeah. So some are rounded and some are sort of dipped in. So it's slightly different. But it's a phenomenal
the console's different as well, wasn't it? It's just like a grey cube, if you will,
square,
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's squarer, and also though the North American game cartridges don't fit in the PAL ones.
That's right, because they're different design,
different
aren't
shape,
they?
Different square. Yeah. So although the Japan and PAL one is the same shape, weird. But it's a legendary design, that controller, mate. It's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. Did you guys ever explore any different types of genres of games with this console? For me, this is the one that started me playing fighting games. That was introduced me into fighting games. Yes. And a few, I can't think of the name of the genre, like spaceship shooters, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Shmups.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Shoot 'em ups.
Shoot 'em up, yeah.
Shmups.
Shoot 'em up, shoot 'em ups.
Because I've got a few names here for some of those, but it wasn't that.
Okay.
But fighting games, mate, 100%, because it was so much easier to port arcade games to the console because of a massive amount of buttons that you've got. But definitely, the SNES kick-started my love of fighting games. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
And
sorry, go on. You say?
No, just
and a few driving games as well, because I don't recall many games I played on the NES for Drive, or Mega Drive even, to be honest.
I don't really think there were that many, were there? I mean, I think we had Micro Machines, didn't we?
Micro Machines, Road Rash,
Skitchin,
Skitchin, Road Race, that sort of stuff. But it's very simple. As soon as the SNES came out, though, you had things like rotating and scaling backgrounds, which I'll talk about, which made driving games much more viable.
Nice. And then, obviously, one last thing. A majority of the games came with the title Super into it. Did that ever, fancy or change for, I have to get this because this is now super such and such, or this is now got super graphics in or something now? It was a good commercial, wasn't it? Yeah, of course, mate.
Like I said, when you were 11, 12 years old, that is uber marketing. Because if it's super, you want it.
Yeah.
It's super powered now, isn't it? Yeah.
Super powered. That was at the Nintendo of America's marketing slogan. I think even Nintendo Europe, it's like, it's not just power, it's super power. And you're like, fuck?
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing.
16-bit superpower.
Not just Castlevania, super Castlevania.
Yeah,
Not
that's
just Mario, Super Mario. It's got to be great. It's of course it's simple, but it works, mate. It works better than I don't know Super Famicom, even I don't know the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES. It just rolls off the tongue. Love it. It feels epic.
Yeah.
Yes, mate.
Right, if nothing else wants to add anyone, then we'll just go to the top fives.
If you wanna,
let's do it. Top fives.
It's time for a top 5.
All right, so let's do the rule like we do for season 7. Who would like to roll the 20 die first?
I'll roll it.
You roll it, sir. Go on, you fucking roll it.
I'll fucking roll it. That's a 19.
Oh, he's clear.
What the hell, man?
So you need a Hellfire symbol to beat that now. 14? Oh, not too bad. Come on, Hellfire. 13. Oh, lucky for some. So, starting with Wayne. Right, guys. Obviously, there is a shit ton of Super Nintendo games. I believe there is a good 1,755 of them. Yes. If we don't mention any of them, fuck you. You should have been on this episode. Number 5.
Number 5.
Starting with you, Wayne, the Games Master.
Absolutely. My number 5 is Donkey Kong Country.
Nice. An honourable mention for me.
It is 1994 launch by Rare. And if you know Rare or Rareware, they were very famous for developing such games as the Killer Instinct series.
Yes. Is it the first one you're going for?
Donkey Kong Country 1.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, because there was 3 of them.
Yeah, the original one. Not the best one, but the one that I have the fondest memory of.
Yeah, sure.
So they did the Killer Instinct series, they did Perfect Dark, they did Banjo-Kazooie.
Yes.
And most famously, they did GoldenEye.
Yeah.
So Rare, phenomenal game publisher, game designer. Anyway, DKC was the one that we got bundled in with our console.
Okay.
So that's why we could narrow down the date to 94, 1995.
Sure.
Because we knew it came with that, so it must have been that date, because that's when it came. So and I think around then or about a year later it came bundled in. And as we know, DK was the original face of Nintendo games.
It
right?
was.
As we explored in the NES.
Yeah.
He was chucking barrels at this upstart shitty little plumber being like, fuck you, this is Pauline, this is my trick now. And he got his own game, and it is phenomenal. That game really pushed the limits of what was possible on the SNES in terms of its graphics.
Yeah.
It came late-ish, or mid to late-ish in its life cycle.
It went up against the PlayStation, that game.
It did.
I
There was
that.
crossover with the PlayStation. And in fact, its graphical fidelity was arguably much better than a lot of the PlayStation launch games. I mean, they were polygonal trash for a lot of it, to be fair. Donkey Kong Country was incredibly elegant. I mean, it is stunning. Has those wonderful, fat, 3D looking visuals, which is amazing.
It was smooth to play as well.
Yeah. And that game is essentially responsible for extending the Super Nintendo's lifespan, because you had a lot of folks who were worried about, should I get the PlayStation? Should I get the next generation of consoles? It was that good, and with graphical fidelity that great, people were like, do you know what? There's no rush. Literally no rush.
Yeah.
Which is stunning. So the impact it had is more than just being a fantastically fun game, which we'll talk about, but it also helped extend the life of the console. Anyway, great fun game, amazing platformer. There's loads of little animals that you can jump on and
That's
find.
right,
It has like the swordfish fella for underwater. It has the rhino, and I remember that.
The rhino was my
The
favourite.
ostrich as well.
Amazing, the ostrich.
Yeah.
Smashing through to get
It can smash
secrets.
through walls and stuff and everything.
It was amazing. They based it obviously around barrels. Like there's a lot of traversal around barrels, because obviously Donkey Kong chucking barrels. So barrels was a big thing. And it was phenomenal. Had some great design with sort of scrolling and scaling, where it used there's minecart levels and things like that. Which is phenomenal.
Good.
It was absolutely wonderful. It was a weird crossover as well, because at the time that they were developing that, Rare also had a dev kit for the Nintendo 64.
Nice.
Right? So they were working on that, but at the same time they had the 64. So they were like, they could have ended up developing it for the 64 and not ever launched it on the SNES. But they went with the SNES because they wanted to eke out every single bit of power from it. And weirdly enough about the development of this, Nintendo's really normally protective of their IP. But with Donkey Kong Country, they were really hands-off. They just let Rare get on with it. And even Shigeru Miyamoto was just like, yeah, crack on, mate.
Crack on, mate.
Yeah, crack on. And it was a massive, massive hit. It became the fastest selling game of all time at its launch.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so at the time of its launch, it beat everything. Sold 500,000 copies in a day. It was crazy. It went wild. Also amazing about that game was the soundtrack.
I was about to say, this has a great soundtrack.
The soundtrack is incredible,
The
man.
soundtrack was something else. It was so atmospheric. And
Yeah, different.
adds to
Absolutely.
our love of synth.
I mean,
you know.
I can just picture it now and can hear it, even like on the map part when you move to different levels.
Yeah,
I know that music because I play that game so much, man. That's such
was
a great
so
soundtrack.
great.
Yeah. Even the water level had great music in there.
aquatic, yeah, you could just close your eyes and fall asleep to that.
That particular piece was the composer's favourite piece. It took him 5 weeks to make, to try and get the right sounds. So
Wow.
for that one piece, which I think is like a 1 minute loop, 5 weeks of work.
Jesus.
Because he wanted to get I think it was essentially emulate like a Korg or a Soog, like a synthesizer on the Super Nintendo, which obviously has a very limited sound card, but somehow managed it. And it was Aquatic Ambience is the name of the piece, and it's freaking awesome. So those listening that don't know that piece of music, whack that on, turn it up, close your eyes. Yeah, smoke a blunt if that's what you're into, and drift away.
Yeah, mate.
So Donkey Kong Country, great memories.
And what did they also release with the original releases of that game?
I don't know, what did they release?
The soundtrack.
The soundtrack. They
Did
did.
they actually?
They did
Which I
release the
still own,
soundtrack.
which I
Yes,
still
they
own.
did.
That and Killer Instinct as well.
They
That
absolutely
got
did.
released,
Yeah.
Another one with great soundtrack.
So and
it's rare again. They always have great soundtracks.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the guy that produced those two soundtracks was a man called David Wise. But I would love to follow up to see what his career went on to do.
Yeah, it's also just on him and his soundtracks. Is it the soundtrack for the GoldenEye pause screen? It's like the most banging version of the 007 thing you've ever heard, mate. It's fucking gangster. You should go and listen to that. It's fucking bad, boy. Anyway, so amazing platformer, mate. Really great. Revolutionary graphics. Great sound. Wonderful platform design. My number 5, Donkey Kong Country.
Nice, mate. Good shout.
Thank you.
My number 5, I don't know how I'm going to follow that very quickly, but so basically, mine is Turtles in Time, Turtles 4.
Yes, mate.
The reason I picked this is because I am a huge fan, or was at the time as a kid, for the arcade game, which we never got to have on a home console. We eventually got it on the NES, but it was piss poor graphics for an 8-bit console. I wanted the one that was at the arcades, the 4-player one you can do. Obviously, you can't do 4-player with the NES, but that was the closest thing at the time to have. And does anyone remember the poster for that game, the cartridge poster for it? It was like a work of art, man. I was like, I want that on a canvas somewhere. So it's fucking awesome. But anyway, it wasn't exactly the same game as the arcade one, but the storyline was close to it. Different timelines. You can obviously have 2 players. The colours boomed on on that SNES. I think it was a higher colour palette than a Mega Drive was or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mega Drive got a different version of it called the Hyperstone Heist, but this one was just the mutts nuts. And some of those levels I can still remember to this day, where you're fighting all of the Foot Clan, and then you've got Kang's massive robot trying to shoot lasers at you at the same time while you're trying to dodge it. And then there's this little thing that Donatello could do where he could throw the Foot Clan at the screen. It was just so revolutionary for its time, and it was a nice little substitute for the arcade game that we never got now. I mean, you can emulate it nowadays, but back then there was no such thing as doing that. But yeah, that's solely the purpose. That's the reason why it's on there. Being a big Turtles fan still am today. You can even get it now on the Cowabunga bundle now or something, isn't it?
Cowabunga bundle.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It looks like you can get play on Steam Deck, you play it on your Xbox and PlayStation, everything. But I highly recommend it. It is a fantastic game, and I've had many great sleepover nights playing Turtles in Time with mates. Obviously before the PlayStation came on, but yeah, cannot deny.
I never played it. Was that a platformer?
Yeah, it was a beat 'em up side, like Streets of Rage.
Oh, amazing!
But yeah, with Turtles.
Oh, that's amazing.
But
I need to play it.
yeah, there was like moments in the arcade where there was like little sewers that would open up, and if you fell down it, you'd be like, who turned out the lights and all that sort of stuff. Or every time you got a pizza to help you, pizza time!
Right.
It's just, kick ass.
Cool.
Definitely a great game for the SNES.
I feel so happy for little Anthony.
I know.
It's a nice story.
Yeah.
Love that, man. That's great.
My little Turtles thing. But yeah, that's my number 5. Short and sweet.
Right, so if we go to my 2 a.m. button masher,
Nice.
my number 5 is Pilot Wings.
Pilot Wings, great game.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a launch title? Or?
It was in the EU.
Okay.
It was. Yes.
I've never played Pilot Wings. I know of it, but never played it.
It's a fun game. I like my aviation, and yeah, this kind of tapped into my little H was very excited for this game because he controlled a light plane, and you could have a rocket belt, and you could be hang gliding. I think skydiving as well. I seem to remember.
Skydiving as well.
Skydiving as well. Yeah, and it was great. The ability to be able to fly without flying, and as a young guy who wanted to get into that, it was just something that was exciting for me, really. And Wayne, you look like you're going to say.
No, it's all right. It was it's kind of like a flight simulator, right? You had you got land planes, and you're also doing some diving. It also used that Mode 7 scaling.
I was going to say Mode 7, which I never fully understood, and they sort of piped up a little bit about it. But yeah, it enhanced the 3D capability of the SNES, didn't it? And I think correct me if I'm wrong, Games Master, but was that kind of like the first sort of example of being able to twist and turn the map using that kind of technology?
Pilot Wings was one of the first uses of the mode, because the SNES had seven modes that it could tap into for utilising various parts of the chipset. Mode 7 was the ability to scale and rotate backgrounds, which created this sort of fake 3D looking effect. So where you saw that in a lot of games on the SNES, where you see lots of backgrounds sort of moving around and getting bigger and smaller, and Pilot Wings is a great example of that.
I was never really good at being able to control that, like the pitch, the roll, the yaw, and all that sort of thing. But it was great, and like I said, you could. There was time trials. You had to direct your pilot through rings in order to complete these time trials. And I think it was the first sort of example for me of that sort of game, which is now incorporated into lots of racing games and flying games. It's a game within a game. But yeah, Pilot Wings,
great game.
It was a great game.
Nice.
Great choice.
And what's the actual pick then, sir?
Well,
classic pick.
In America, they called it Star Fox. We would have called it Star Wing.
Star Wing.
Star Wing, baby. Why was the name changed? I didn't look into that.
Well, they did that with the N64, didn't they? Because it was Lilac Wars here, but it was Star Fox in the States.
I think, no, it wasn't Lilac Wars. That was Star Fox 2, wasn't it? Lilac Wars?
That's the N64 version, Lilac Wars.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I'm going to make an assumption that there must be some obscure German or otherwise European cartoon property that's called Star Fox.
Possibly.
Right? There must be some reason.
You're probably not a million miles away from the truth.
So there's got to be some legal reason why they couldn't call it. So, but anyway, sorry. Great choice.
So
this was the one built with the FX chip inside, wasn't it?
The FX chip, yeah. And
yes.
So another example of using that enhanced 3D technology. You could work from your third and first person perspective for this game. I mean, I think when this was my package, so when we got this, that's the game that was included. So obviously, I played it to the absolute nth degree until another game came along that we could afford.
Sure,
loved it. Yeah, Fox McCloud with his Star Fox team, defending their home world of Corneria from the forces of Andros. Yeah, what is
Andros, wasn't it?
Andros. Can you name the rest of the crew?
Slippy was one of them, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Slippy Toad, Peppy Hare, and Falco Lombardi.
Falco!
And
he's a miserable piece of shit, isn't he?
But he looked like the dude, and I think every time they had a cutscene, he was just there, and he had this sort of Sam the Eagle look about him, and it was great.
Yeah.
Interesting about this one. So sold 4 million copies worldwide. Was one of the most popular, biggest selling games for Super Nintendo.
Tremendously popular, that.
Yeah, and we were talking about the certain names of these types of games. This was called a rail shooter.
Rail shooter.
Rail
shooter.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Because the screen's moving forwards and you're moving around it with a central target. Yeah.
I looked at the graphics on this game, and I always thought at the time, bit of a hypocrite really, because I loved it, but I looked at it and I thought, I can do a lot better than this. But then it paved the way for what we now know. Without games like this, we couldn't have the super enhanced sort of movie style games that we have. But yeah, Star Fox, it was absolutely game changer for me.
Tremendous. You talked about the FX chip. Can I quickly add something in there?
Of course you can.
The FX chip was one of a number of enhancement chips that Nintendo developed, right, and they gave to their third party and first party developing partners, and it was a way of extending the life of the console. So instead of putting like a super expensive CPU in there, which would basically be obsolete in a year or two, what they did is they gave space in the actual cartridge of the games, 16 pins either side, for developers to add extra chips which would do calculations that the console itself couldn't do, right? And there were a bunch of these that they released.
So the cartridge would help the
cartridge
console,
would help the console.
Okay.
And they were called enhancement chips. So developers for things like Star Fox, that Super FX, that would be in the cartridge. That would be handling the graphics for that.
Makes sense.
While the
Gotcha.
Super NES would just be running the base game.
Yeah. That's very, very clever.
Incredibly clever. And it meant that they could keep every now and then where they had like a new idea or technology advanced, they'd create an enhancement chip, give that out to their partners, and then they'd then use that in future. And there was like 9 or 10 of these chips over its lifetime, which is an amazing piece of engineering. Yeah.
Nice little marketing for it as well.
Yeah,
wasn't it,
definitely.
really?
Yeah.
Now it's got the FX chip. Now it's got this. Now it's got the.
It's got the super FX.
Yeah, the
super parents got super FX.
Yeah, man, it's wonderful, and it was cheap as well. It means they didn't have to put super expensive bits in the SNES. Anyway,
nice.
Great
Anything
pick.
else on that, Harold?
No.
Nice.
Star
We'll
Fox.
go to number 4s then.
Number 4.
Back to you, Games Master. What's your number 4, sir?
back to number 4. Number 4 will probably be a lot of people's listening. A lot of listening people's. Whatever the grammar is. I can't grammar. I've got my head too full of facts. Is Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Of course.
Yep.
Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past will probably be a lot of people's number one games. I don't have a lot of modern Nintendo consoles, so I've not really played a lot of the new Zelda games, which apparently are all amazing.
Sure.
As was this, which paved the way. Released in 1992 in this market, 1991 in Japan, so very early on. And when you think about the scope and scale of that game, considering how early it came out, it is staggering. I mean, it's such an amazing, amazing production. So the original Legend of Zelda was on the NES, and it set the sort of the basic platform of the game, exploring the world, top-down view. And then the second one was weird. It was side-scrolling. Remember that one? Also on the NES.
Yeah. It wasn't as popular.
Wasn't as popular. It wasn't as good. I remember playing that going, well, what is this? But A Link to the Past basically made that series legendary at that point. It went back to that top-down view. And from the very outset of that game, you are thrown into the action. It's a stormy night. Your uncle gets taken away or whatever, and you've got to go out into the night, and you've got it's just wild. It's raining. It's
I remember that cutscene when he's on the boat and he holds the rope, isn't it?
It's amazing,
Yeah.
man. I mean, it's dark, it's moody, it's raining, it's atmospheric. The music's going, and it's like these long, moody minor chords and this deep melody. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal game. You had the light world and the dark world, and when you discovered that there was like an entirely different world in the game, which was as big as the world that you were just exploring and totally different, fucking hell, that blew my mind as a kid. I mean, the scale of it was ridiculous. And essentially it was given a massive budget, right? And it was given twice the capacity of every other SNES game that was made up to that point. So every other SNES game was about 500 kilobytes in size. This was a whole megabyte in size for storage, which was just ridiculous to think of back then. Your whole cartridge full of this stuff. Phenomenal game. It's really memorable stuff. All of the memorable items that you'd collect, because it was a really clever design where it was open world.
Yeah.
But open world in a way where it locked off sections based on items that you had to collect. Kind of like the Castlevania or the Metroid approach, right? So in order to get to certain secrets or to go to certain paths, you'd need the hammer. I don't have the hammer. Where do I get that? Maybe I'll get that in this dungeon. So you go into the dungeon, get the hammer, and then you go and use the hammer and then you can get through that path.
What an achievement.
Yeah. You've got a hammer. Or a bug net, or the ocarina, which is, I think, the first example of the ocarina. The boomerang and the mirror, which actually shift between dimensions. What else was it? The bow and arrow, the bombs. You break open secret passageways during the when you're exploring. Such a great design. All the colors are amazing. The level design, the puzzles, the dungeons, just absolutely phenomenal. All the enemies, great story. Simply told, but effectively told. And very much, go out, get the 3 powerful things, combine them to get the MacGuffin to go kill the monster. Simple, story as old as time, but it was so engrossing.
You good to finish it?
I did finish it.
Yeah.
100%. I was upset. I don't think at the time, because I think this was released in, like I said, 92, I think I said. And I don't think I would have got this until like 96, 97 maybe, like much later on. And so I was a bit older, and so probably more able to appreciate RPGs, which is kind of where I would have been just before I got into Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
So that's where the crossover probably was. But phenomenal game. Music by Koji Kondo. So the legendary Koji Kondo, who did all the Super Mario music and a bunch of other Nintendo music. Very memorable. Very different, his themes. And his themes are actually present in every other Zelda game since then. They're leitmotifs that are used everywhere. And if you listen to any of the music from Link to the Past, and you've played any of the modern Zelda games, you'll recognise all of that music. Promise you.
Nice.
That was my number 4.
So how did... obviously, there's no memory cards back then. So how did they have a save file or processed or something?
Yes,
or what?
they did. So, for certain games, when the budget was high enough, Nintendo would allow you to put a battery in the cartridge. Literally, just a circle disc battery. So it's called a battery backup. So it would save to the cartridge itself, not to the console. So obviously, it needed power in the battery pack to keep it active.
Okay.
Otherwise, obviously, if you took the battery out, the save file would just disappear. Right? So and these batteries would degrade over time. So interesting little thought there. So if you were to open up and reverse engineer one of those game packs, you will find a little circular, almost like a watch battery in there.
All corroded.
Probably corroded, but
Yeah.
battery backup. It was
Okay,
called
interesting.
battery
I never
save.
knew that.
No.
Did you not know that?
Another-
There we go.
another-
I knew
here
that
I
they'd
am,
done it-
nugget of
Dropping
gold.
knowledge, mate.
I knew they had it for like other games, but I never knew they did it for Link, because again, it's such an early game for the consoles. I never knew they were ahead of themselves on that one.
Yes,
So,
sticking a battery backup save in there.
But we talk about games that paved the way. I mean, it was very cinematic. You talked about the little piece at the beginning, and now games that we take for granted, again, for examples like that, and such an iconic character like Link. Brilliant. Absolutely.
Silent protagonist as well.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's
of course.
which is I don't know how I feel about Silent Protagonist, right? Because I love that game, but I think in all of my RPGs that I was into going forward, I preferred more like the third person perspective, and I liked the idea of not visually but storytelling wise, where I like seeing the hero's story. Whereas Link, I suppose it wants to impart that you are the hero to some effect, right? Link is the generic hero who doesn't say anything, or at least in Link to the Past years. I mean, I don't know about the modern games if he says anything. Does he say anything?
Pass.
I don't know.
Pass.
No,
I have no idea.
No, he doesn't.
Tell us, listeners, does he say anything? Because in Link to the Past, he said, fuck all, mate. It was quiet. I was like, say something, motherfucker. But no, Silent Protagonist, which is an interesting storytelling.
Yeah.
But in that example, very powerful.
Very powerful.
And he didn't even say a word then.
No, he didn't. No.
I stayed quiet. Interesting storytelling. Quiet. That was my number 4.
Nice, sir. My number 4 is Star Wars, but it's not just Star Wars, it is Super Star Wars.
Super Star Wars is amazing.
I've picked this because of the summer of '94. This was the game that broke me. This is a hard son of a bitch of a game. Yeah. Not just this one, the other two as well. Super Empire Strikes Back, Super Return of the Jedi. But I got this. Basically, they re-released the videos of before the special edition trilogy had come out, so they were getting ready for that. So they re-released it. And I was in such a Star Wars mood, and in I think my cousin let me borrow a copy, his cartridge, whatnot, and I was playing that puppy. Your 6 weeks holiday summer, and try, because again that doesn't have the little save file thing. So when you end the game, you got to go all the way back to the beginning. Like if you hit reset, hit power, whatnot. But this is such a great game, especially for Star Wars fans. How you can literally relive the movie, but in such a massively different way. Like you can actually go in the Sandcrawler, you can start blowing shit up and take out bosses. You could go against the Sarlacc pit, which wasn't even until Return of the Jedi, but for some reason it's in this movie. You can shoot Jawas, and every time you shoot them, they go Houdini. So the amount of times you did that, it was brilliant. It's got driving sections in that game where you can actually go on the land speeder and try and catch up with the Sandcrawler again. You can go to Mos Eisley, and you can have the band playing in the background, and you can pick extra characters. You start off as Luke Skywalker. Later on, you can be Han Solo and Chewbacca. super, super hard levels when you go to the Death Star. And, of course, the ridiculous last level, I swear to God, I tried. This was getting good before get good even that term even existed.
Get good.
That fucking level. I swear to God, there are times where I nearly took that puppy out and threw it out the fucking window. Seriously, because you have to obviously go down the Death Star. You've got to shoot other lasers. You've got to shoot other things before it hits you, and then you have this very, very bad stay on target sound. Do you remember that? Every time you dodge and hit in the wall, stay on target. And then you have the LRR buttons, which are the bumpers on the controller, which is when you shoot your torpedoes. So obviously relive the ending, and it goes down there. And then you hear this very poorly sounded Obi-Wan goes, the Force. That was your key to hit both those buttons. And if you didn't do it, you have to redo the whole level again. And again, you have to learn that the hard way.
Brutal.
Absolutely brutal.
So Wayne, in the previous podcast, talked about pattern recognition.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good example
Yes.
of, just get good or get gone.
It was, mate. Yeah. I mean, Super Star Wars was the one for me, but when I got to do Super Empire, I gave up on that. Even the first level is ridiculously stupid hard. I will never forget the summer of '94. I was like Star Wars heaven there, and that's when do you remember they used to bring out these toys of Micro Machines, Star Wars?
Yeah,
it was like a play set. It'd be the head of Darth Vader, but
or
inside it would have
C-3PO,
the play set of a thing from Star Wars or something. They all came out then as well.
Moving parts, and they used to droid factory and things like that.
That's it.
Yeah, I used to love all that.
And then again, I know this game so well, right? There's a level where you can play as Chewbacca, and if you press down and jump, Chewbacca does this slide. He slides on his back, but he gets through the level so quickly if you just keep doing the Chewbacca slide, as I say. And every time he's absolutely hundreds of fun. It killed me, but I enjoyed it. And
if you left Chewie for long enough, didn't he turn to the TV screen and went,
that's it, yeah.
Absolutely,
yeah. Fun times had by you all, I can't deny. My thumb's bled for that game.
I bet. I'm now thinking that the Chewbacca slide should be a sexual euphemism. I'm giving the old Chewbacca slide tonight, mate.
Do the old Chewbacca slide.
Chewbacca slide.
When you're done, you do the Wookiee roar.
Well, there's the dirty Chewbacca. Do you know what that is?
The dirty Chewbacca.
The dirty Chewbacca.
Oh, go on.
So, sorry, ladies, if you're listening. So basically, woman takes you in the mouth, right? And then as you explode in her mouth, you twist her nipple on her tits, and she goes.
Anthony! Oh my goodness! Anyway, I've got one memory of this game. Let me move swiftly past
the Chewbacca slide.
Sorry, where's my chain of thought? My one memory of this game was playing it at a friend's house going, that's too fucking hard. That was basically it. I've never bought it.
Yeah, exactly.
Never played it again.
Ridiculously hard, but yeah.
That was it. Great game.
Great game. Howard, over to you, sir.
So my 2 a.m. button masher is the Indiana Jones Greatest Adventure.
Nice! Is that the one when you can do all three, but you can choose?
You start off with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then much like
yes,
the Star
honourable
Wars.
mention for me. That is yes.
Okay, yeah. So another Lucasfilm property, and done in exactly the same vein as the Super Star Wars games. So you start as Indy, and then you make your way through the three original films as they were at the time. Not as hard as Super Star Wars.
But it's still hard, though.
It's hard, and again, you have to get good. Otherwise, you like you say, you're just going to start throwing stuff at the TV screen.
Do you remember the start of every level? You hear Indy go, "Let's go."
Yeah, that's it. I think he tips his hat, doesn't he? He tops his hat.
Let's go.
Oh, brilliant! But so you talk about Star Wars. I mean, in the years before, all we had were the arcade version where you were just flying and X-wing down the trench run to the Death Star, and we never had an Indiana Jones game. So along comes Super Star Wars, delivers you the game of your life where you can be these characters that we all grew up with, and then they delivered Indiana Jones. And as we have contested in previous podcasts with G, I will fight him in a Vulcan arena to the death.
Over Indy.
over indie every single time. So you've got Super Star Wars, but Indiana Jones was always my go-to. So,
I remember when you died in that game and the continue thing comes up and it's a picture of Sean Connery.
Yes.
And he just goes, I've lost him.
I don't know who did the voiceovers for these games, but it was genius because it clearly wasn't taken from the films. It was
Amazing.
It's so good. Again, I want to mention that was,
out of work voice actor. But yeah, brilliant. So exactly the same Super Star Wars, exactly the same game mechanics, exactly the same gameplay. I didn't give a shit. It was Indiana Jones. And I played it right till you met the Knight Templar at the very end of the Last Crusade. Yeah, amazing.
Nice.
Very nice.
So what's the actual pick?
Super Star Wars.
Oh, no way! Is it really? Nice.
Number 4, baby.
Super Star Wars.
Super Star Wars. A run and gun.
Yes, it is.
Run and
Yes,
gun.
yes.
What can I add to what you just said, really? Absolutely brilliant. And I'm one of the planet's biggest Star Wars fans. I'm probably sitting in a room with two others as we speak. Going from the old arcade version of flying the X-wing through the Death Star to actually being able to physically play these characters, and I mean, as a little kid, you're jizzing your pants because this was the best thing since sliced bread.
Amazing, mate.
It was, mate. It was just, again, the little cutscenes from the film as well with the Super Nintendo graphics as well.
The music was very, very well done. It was 16-bit music. But it took you to a galaxy far, far away.
Do you remember when the LucasArts symbol used to come out at the start of the game and it would go wah, in stereo at the bottom?
It did, yeah. And it was very stilted. But again, we were like, oh my God, I'm about to explode because this is Star Wars. And it's
so good.
Absolutely brilliant. But Super Star Wars.
Nice.
Feeling. Love it.
Let's go to number 3 then.
Number 3.
Back to you, sir.
My number 3 is
Super Star Wars.
No, it's probably on both of your lists. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. But my number 3 is Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo, released in 1993, and at its time was the best fighting game in the world.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Full stop. Period. There is no argument, no debate. The best fighting game released to that point. It revolutionized fighting games. I mean, what else is there to say? It was an arcade game, obviously, first, and came to the Super Nintendo first. And this was a coup.
It was an exclusive, wasn't it?
It was. It wasn't an exclusive, but it didn't go to the Mega Drive until a full year or even
couple
years later,
yeah.
maybe a couple of years later. And that did a couple of things for Nintendo. First, it helped shake off that kiddie image, right?
Yeah.
They were kind of shaking it off anyway at sort of 1993 time. They were kind of getting there. But when Street Fighter 2 was like theirs for a little while, that solidified it, man, because that game was so freaking good. And I was obsessed with that game. And I remember super vividly with my brother, we would play the shit out of it. I was always Ryu, and he was always Ken.
Yeah.
Right? And that was like our personalities in a nutshell.
The enmity of the ages.
Yeah, and it was literally we could not be like more into it and fighting each other. It was such a great time. Obviously, you've got the World Warriors. You're flying around the world, fighting the Street Fighter tournament. Which and the lore of Street Fighter, by the way, is fucking balmy. If you ever look into it, there's a great video on YouTube called "The Wild Lore of Street Fighter" or something like that, and it's fucking mental. It doesn't make any sense, but it is hilarious to watch. So definitely worth doing. But yeah, this was essentially the start of the boom of fighting games.
Yes.
From that point onwards, fighting games became a humongous fucking deal. Like loads of franchises launched off of the back of Street Fighter's immense work here. And yeah, it's a phenomenal game. We played the shit out of it, mate. I loved that very, very much. We had the Turbo Edition, not the original edition, because again, we got to it later.
The Turbo Edition is in your list, is it?
Yes, the Turbo Edition specifically is in my list.
It was better when it sped up a bit, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit better. So that was the one. And I think the original edition was what I'm talking about in terms of success.
Did Turbo have the one where you can have the bosses? You can fight as the bosses.
Yeah, you can do.
Yeah, because in the original you couldn't, could you?
could not.
That was the first iteration where you could play as the bosses.
That's right. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So yeah, the music was amazing. Of course,
yes, of course.
Guile's theme, baby.
Yes.
Guile.
Guile was my man.
Guile. Yes, mate.
I'm because for an aviator like yourself, he had the plane in the background and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's the reason I when my hair gets long, that's why I always have that quiff.
Nice.
It's
You do the
Guile quiff. Yeah,
He had the weirdest fucking haircut. This was like a vertical flat top.
Yeah.
Like, just doesn't
Hey,
make any
Wayne,
sense.
you haven't seen me in the morning.
Mate, send me a picture with your Guile hair. But yeah, what an amazing game. What an amazing experience. Like, incredible graphics. You had all of those like bonus stages, which were amazing, like smashing up a car and shit like that. The characters all played very wildly differently. At the time of development, Capcom didn't really care so much about balance, more just about fun. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about, actually, as in terms of the development of the game. You probably know this already, but in the Japanese release and the European release, the names of the bosses are all different.
Yes.
Yes.
So the main bad guy that we know as M. Bison was, in the Japanese version, the boxer, which we know as Balrog.
Yes.
Right? Because, obviously, Black Boxer, M. Bison sounds like Mike Tyson. Comes to Europe, lawsuit. So, legal reasons had to change that, and they swapped it all around. And I think Vega was meant to be Balrog, and then there was a whole weird swish of different stuff there. So anyway, out of concern for Mike Tyson's legal team, they basically changed it all in Europe and the US. Which
Nintendo have an interesting relationship with Mike Tyson.
Yes.
They do. Yeah, Mike Tyson's Punch Out as well.
I'm surprised Dowson didn't turn into Tiger King or something.
Yeah, crazy. But there was, in Street Fighter, obviously there's missing frames between moves, right? Which basically became combos, right? So you go a punch into another punch or a punch into a kick, and if you timed it right, there'd be frames missing where you go bam bam, and it'd be like a combo, and you couldn't reply.
Okay.
That was a bug.
Oh, okay.
That was completely accidental. So when the developers were making a bug check through the different stages, they were like, hang on, that's not supposed to be right. There's supposed to be a frame in between here, but it was something to do with how the graphics interact with the frame rate or whatever it was, but it just skipped the frame between these two movesets. The developer went, that's cool, I'm leaving that in. And that was basically the birth of all combo systems in fighting games.
You couldn't imagine it any other way.
Couldn't imagine it any other way, and it came from a design.
A glitch.
Bug.
Yeah.
Anyway, interesting
That's crazy.
factoid. My number 3, Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Nice, sir. Good pick.
Rock on. Love it, mate.
My number 3, we're sticking with the supers. Mine is Super Castlevania 4.
Great game.
This game is... I had Castlevania in my NES one. This is essentially a revamp of that game, but just a super 16-bit version. Now, the reason I love this game, right? Okay, let me just take you through the start. So you plug the cartridge in, Konami comes up, press start. You get a little immersive tombstone that explains the story as the writing goes up, and this little fog all the way comes up, and you get all immersed in it. And this little lightning comes down, blows up the tombstone. Little orb comes out. You're like, oh, this is so good. You got the control in your hand, and then there's this one shot where Simon Belmont is literally at the bottom of this castle. He looks up and he just gets his whip and goes like that. And then next minute you go into the level. The level starts off kind of basic. You're shooting a couple of candles, you get a couple of collectibles, whatnot, and then there's the part where you go on the drawbridge, you start walking towards, and the drawbridge goes up, and you're locked in this fucking castle, right, to the game. And then one of the greatest soundtracks on Super Nintendo history, and it kicks in. This game is the best. I don't care what anyone says. Is the best Castlevania game ever. This is the game that lives and breathes you playing as Simon Belmont. You play as him. The control in this game is fantastic for him. In other Castlevania games, his control is very restricted to how he can whip left, right, up, down, whatnot. In this game, he can whip any section. You can hook on it on top of sides. You can slide to, like, very much like Indiana Jones with his whip. And you can swing to other sections in the game. The level design in this game is amazing. Going back to what you were saying, Wayne, about how the background can move and stuff. Mm-hmm. There are levels where it's like you're like when you're in the tunnel and the tunnel spins round in the background. There's another one where the actual castle is like rotating completely all the way around. So you have to hang on to your whip, has other hooks underneath you and everything. The bosses have all revamped in this to, again, amazing graphics for the Super Nintendo could do at the time. It is just the whole entire package of what I loved on the NES, growing up playing that hard son of a bitch, and slightly easier on this version, but I cannot deny I had an amazing time with it. I still do to this day. Like I said, it's my favourite Castlevania game of all time, and there are so many of those games now, aren't there? It's ridiculous. Absolutely. Even the new revamps on the 360 or PS3, whatnot, there's got nothing on Super Castlevania 4. It's just the definitive Castlevania game for me, and that's why it had to go on there on such an early console as well.
Yeah.
It is you know, I still play Castlevania games now. Nothing stood the test of time for Super Castlevania 4 for me. 100%.
Is it the first one on the Super Nintendo, or was there
that was the first one. That was the first one.
Yeah. The first Castlevania
Yeah.
on the Super Nintendo,
Yeah.
and it was a stone cold classic, mate.
Absolutely, mate. It's one of the earlier titles for the console as well. Like I said, when they announced, I think it was called Super Dracula X or something,
Yes,
which
it
was
was.
going to be
Yeah.
thing, and it never came out. It got changed to something else, and I believe the Mega Drive had one as well. I think it's called Castlevania Bloodlines, which actually follows on from 4 in the end, and it's like, it's a shame, really, but hey.
Yeah, of any console, the Super Nintendo was where the platformer became king, right? And it was the console for platform games, and it was where that genre, I think, was pretty much perfected.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a great example of it.
And they always look so good.
Yeah, they look phenomenal.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely stunning game. Great game. Great choice.
Yeah.
You were very passionate about it. You really sold it to me.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I never forget that. Just that little time in the fog. It's like it's my stupidest thing ever, because I had like a small TV at the time, and you know, you just got so immersed in it. I was like, oh my god, this is such an upgrade from what the first one was, you know. And yeah, I can't deny it. I go back and play it. I think I've even got it on my Steam Deck.
Nice.
It's ridiculous.
Oh,
It's
really?
like, I still have it for that.
Atmospheric, mate. It's great.
Yes, mate.
Nice.
Well, my button masher number 3 is The Incredible Hulk.
Oh, I know. Yes, is this the one when you can turn into Bruce Banner as well?
So this was the aspect of this game that I like. I love The Incredible Hulk. I love my Marvel characters, and I was having this conversation a little while ago with my partner, and she said to me, "What one superhero? Well, no, correction. That's misnomer. But what one character from Marvel or DC do you consider to be the character that you like the most?" And I said Bruce Banner. She went, "Oh, The Incredible Hulk." I went, "No, Bruce Banner." I said, because Bruce Banner is the Hulk. The Hulk comes from Bruce Banner, and it's the interesting sort of background and history of that character, because he's just so fucked up in the head, and then he becomes this creature. So, quick segue there, to be able to play a game where you're not just the Incredible Hulk, you can be Bruce Banner as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
you had to get to certain sections.
Yes, you did. Yeah, because you could become the Hulk and you could smash the shit out of all of the robots and all the bad guys and mash up the cars. But in order to get through that tunnel or that little hatch, you had to basically reverse Hulk out and become Bruce Banner again. And he could pick up a gun and he could fire. And yeah, it was great. And I don't think there's one Marvel game that has actually bettered itself for me. There probably are. I mean, I don't know if you guys play Marvel games, but yeah, this one in particular was the one for me. So it was a 2 a.m. button masher.
I used to love the transformation between the two as well.
It was great.
For a 16-bit, it's actually quite good.
Yeah, because he literally went through about 3 or 4 stages of transformation to go from the Incredible Hulk, and he, like in the old 80s cartoon, he grabbed his head and he fell to the floor and he changed back into Bruce Banner. He got to his feet and instantly started gunning down bad guys. But
Was it a platformer, side scroller?
it was a platform beat 'em up.
Platform beat 'em up.
Platform beat 'em up, yeah.
Going and beating up all the robots.
Yeah,
Uppercutting them and whatnot.
Exactly, yeah, and you had limited sort of range of moves, but they were pretty good for the time.
His fucking jumps in that game was straight up.
Amazing, but yeah, and then you come down, you do the superhero landing.
That's
and
right.
The punch on the ground, you just blew the enemies away.
Nice.
And you could do a sonic clap as well, where he just put his hands together.
That's right, yes.
They just part ways, and it was brilliant. So you would come up against enemies like the Rhino, the Absorbing Man, the Abomination, and Tyrannus. Little known character, but you were fighting against the leader, another nameless sort of campaign to rule the world and just destroy humanity, etc. He said, he's one every week. But yeah, just a great little side scrolling beat 'em up. And,
Nice.
Yeah, the Incredible Hulk. I've always loved that character, so it was a bit of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those underrated ones as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the
because you had like Maximum Carnage and all that sort of stuff, and then this came out and it's like, this is actually really good.
That's what I mean. And I like Spider-Man as a character, and those games were good, and I think they had their fans, but for me, it was this Incredible Hulk game, and the music was good as well. I really like that. So the developer I think it was US Gold.
Okay.
US Gold, but previously for machines like the Amstrad and the Spectrum and the Commodore, I do believe that they were involved with some of the early like California game type games.
Yes.
Yeah. So to come along and develop something like this and deliver this, it was brilliant.
Nice. So what's the actual pick, sir?
Street Fighter 2.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Turbo edition. Hyper Fighting.
Yeah, Hyper Fighting.
Hyper Fighting.
Yeah, it couldn't be any other thing. I see you talk about Well Warriors and all the games that came after that, but no, it was this version, I think. And you're absolutely right, Wayne. It paved the way for games we know today. And there are IPs out there that I won't talk about because they're very possibly on your list. I won't say anything. But yeah, without this, there would be nothing else that we know today.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a great game, mate. Great pick.
Yeah, you mentioned everything that I was going to talk about.
Sorry, buddy.
No, that's all right.
What a bastard.
I think the only thing that I absolutely dislike about this game is that fucking shit Jean-Claude Van Damme film that came out in 1994.
How dare you, sir? How dare you? That's one of my favourite guilty pleasures of all time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, it is. Don't get me wrong. It's one of those films that I think I would sit down and watch.
Kylie Minogue in it.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody loves Kylie Minogue, but just because after I watched this, and I was a big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, I still am, but I found out that every single scene he was absolutely high as a kite.
Yeah.
Acted his way through it, just smashed off his face.
Mate, ridiculous.
And now I can't watch it without knowing that fact. I just think, what
Bison, you're off the air.
So silly, isn't it?
What a steamy pile of turd. But yeah, and Raul Julia's last film.
Was, yeah.
Sadly. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, that's the only thing I don't like about Street Fighter 2 is that for shit film.
Yeah, we might change your mind on that. We might have to do a commentary corner and change your mind on that, sir.
Yeah, I was sitting on that any day.
Nice. Let's go to number 2's then.
Alrighty.
Number 2.
Games Master, back to you, sir.
My number 2 is Super Mario Kart.
Oh, okay.
Super Mario Kart, released in 1992, very early on at least in our market, at least. Amazing game, and I remember playing that just constantly with my brother, mate. Like all of the GP, playing through that, all 5 courses in 4 GP, so it was 20 different courses, I think it was, and just smashing it. It was made for 2-player mayhem.
100%.
That's what it was for. Before that was F-Zero. Right, and both of these games share a common design thing, which is the Mode 7 scrolling, scaling backgrounds, right, which gave it that 3D effect. F-Zero was the sense of speed, but Mario Kart was basically developed because Nintendo wanted a 2-player version of that, and they couldn't do that with the way that F-Zero was designed, so they needed to slow things down and do that. So Mario Kart. In terms of its, I'll talk a bit about this development and my history with it, but it began as a failed experiment. They wanted to create like a kart game, and it was like a generic kart racers. Nintendo went, "This is shit, don't do this." But it came from this failed experiment to essentially become the 4th biggest game in the Super Nintendo's history, selling like 9 million units.
Wow.
It's essentially, it didn't start out as a Mario game. It started out as this shitty kart game. Nintendo went no. Eventually, they decided to put some Mario characters in there, and then the whole thing blew up in terms of its development. They were added like months into development. Interesting things about the way that it was developed. The dev team had no idea how go-karts were handled. And they thought, okay, go-karts would be fun. Let's make this a friendly, competitive game. We need to slow the speed down in order to make it, viewable, because F-Zero was a mind fuck at high speed. 2 players doing that would just not work. So they slowed it down, did more twisty, I suppose, acrobatic courses. But they didn't know how go-karts worked. So the dev team basically did a day trip to a local amusement park to just ride around on go-karts all day. and just to figure out how they worked, what the perspective was. So they got the right camera level when you were driving, and make sure that the physics are right and stuff like that, which is really fascinating. So they learned a lot about the handling of physics. They then tried to build their own remote control cart. So they took that learning, tried to make a physical remote control cart to see what it would be like with a controller, right? So they took the practical application of the go-kart, actually riding it, then tried to build a RC one, and then to control it. About 2 hours after building it, one of the junior devs smashed it into a wall. Right, so they didn't do that again, and that ended that experiment, which I thought was freaking hilarious to read about. And yeah, it was just an amazing game. So that was part of the development stuff. It wasn't expected to be a hit. It was an absolute sleeper hit, which is ridiculous to think about it now, because it spawned an absolute monstrous franchise.
Absolutely.
Right. At the time, it was just Nintendo's weird kart racing game, the weird Mario Kart racing game.
Now it's one of its go-to franchises.
Yeah,
now,
it's one of
isn't
its go-to franchises. But this thing blew the fuck up. I mean, people loved it. I mean, it was people got obsessed about it because I got obsessed about it. All of the race course design was so genius. Yeah, everyone knows about Rainbow Road and how difficult it was.
Absolutely.
Right? Very, very difficult. And the donut plains and Cooper Beach.
Yep.
Right, all amazing courses, and they were really ingeniously designed. About halfway through development, maybe 3/4 of the way through, they implemented a jump button, right, with the bumper buttons. LR.
Yes, yeah.
That didn't exist at first, but when they introduced it, I thought, oh, that's genius. Now we can start doing little shortcuts and stuff. And then after that, they came up with the drift. Drifting,
yes, yeah.
Right, and if you drift in Super Mario Kart, it makes the Mode 7 or the landscape rotate faster. So it rewards you for drifting.
Right.
So if you drift around corners, you will go faster.
Yeah.
So it was a way that the designers came up with of making it like accessible for everybody, easy to control, but if you're good at it, you'll go faster.
You'll go faster.
Right? Which is amazing as well. Items weren't even in the game at first. They were added much later. Can you imagine a Mario Kart game without items?
No, you've got to have it. You've got to have it.
Interestingly as well, they developed... Sorry, I bashed my microphone there. Interestingly as well, they initially put an option in the game to turn the items off.
Really?
Yep. And Shigeru Miyamoto and the other lead designer went, no, we're going to eliminate that option, give people no option.
I was going to say, what sick fuck would want to do that?
I can't imagine it without it, really, can you?
The reason behind that was that they thought it wouldn't be well accepted by like racing fans, right, who just want a racing game, because there's other racing games in the market, so they wanted to appeal to both, like Mario fans and like people that want a kart racing fun game, and then racing games. So I can see the logic behind it, but then I think they made the right decision in the end, where it
100%.
becomes an intrinsic part of the game, right? And originally, it was totally random what items you get. So even if you're in first place, you could get like a superstar, and you just hammer it and you win. So they then later had to balance the percentages. So as you probably know, listeners, when you're in first place, your likelihood of getting a superstar is nil. Right? It's basically nil.
Yeah.
But you're in last place, pretty high. It's like 70, 80% or whatever. And variance therein, depending on how far through the race you are, what place you're in, etc. Which is a genius little bit of maths, which is great as well. So fantastic. All of the characters are amazing. Obviously, very like iconic characters. You've got Mario and Luigi and Donkey Kong and Bowser. Well, Donkey Kong Jr., as a matter of fact.
He was, yeah.
DKJ, because he got a vest on. And you had Princess Peach and Koopa Trooper and her little mushroom slave man, whatever. Toad, yeah, mushroom slave man. So whatever,
Japanese version.
Yeah, whatever function he performs. But I love that all of the racers have their own stats. They all handle differently.
Yeah, because wasn't it the bigger they were?
They were faster, but slow acceleration.
That's right.
But they were also heavier, so you could knock people out of the way. Whereas like Toad and Koopa Trooper had great handling, but were very light and didn't have a very high top speed.
But that was great, because you even though you had your favourites and everybody did, you would intermittently play those in order to be able to hone your skill at those particular characters.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, that so much thought went into that game. And again, it came from like a failed kart racing beta test to see how that would work. And it almost got shelved, and it evolved several times over its development, which I think is just a fascinating story. And the fact that they released it thinking, oh, this will do moderately okay, and it became an absolute monster smash hit is just just phenomenal. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So I learned something about this game in researching for this podcast, and I'm upset that young me didn't know this. Do you know how you collected coins?
Yes.
Through the game, right on the track, there were coins on the floor. Do you know what they did?
No.
The more coins you had, the higher the top speed of your cart.
Really? Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that either.
Points thing at the end.
I thought it was something you could buy for your car at the end or something.
That is a fact. Now I know when you got bashed and you fell off, Lucato would
cost you coins.
You'd take you some coins or whatever. And I thought, maybe it's just a way of protecting you. No, the more coins you had, the higher your cart's top speed.
No way.
Young me, if I knew that at the time, I would have been.
I'd been collecting that shit. Yeah. More than the actual items.
I don't know if that's news to anyone else, but old me is blown away with
I learned that as well just now, mate. So
there we go.
Wow.
Something for you.
I play Mario Kart with my daughter now, and I keep thinking, why is he keeping me coins? Now I know why.
Now you know why, mate. Increases top speed of your car. My number 2, Super Mario Kart.
Nice, mate. Who would have thought just putting Nintendo characters on the go-kart would make that?
But yeah, you say it did spawn this monster, and I think now, interestingly, people refer when you talk about Super Mario. A lot of people's go-tos, they'll instantly put the word kart on the end of it.
Yeah,
it became Super Mario Kart as a title.
It's like the go-to multiplayer game for the Nintendo a lot of the time, because it's an amazing multiplayer experience. I mean, nowadays you get to play 4-player and online and blah blah blah, and it's incredible. But even 2-player split screen, which it was at the time, amazing. I mean,
this was the one game on any platform. And I will sit here and probably eat my words when it comes to it, but I literally became unbeatable.
Yeah,
absolutely unbeatable.
Ooh!
Tournament, baby.
Any platform, just putting it out there.
Any platform.
Yeah, it was that and Street Fighter.
Sounds like a challenge.
Maybe that's why I said it.
I love that.
In recent years with the shop, so we had the little retro gaming room at the back, and I used to get several people who would roll by, and they would always say, "Oh yeah, I'm really good at this particular game." I used to stop what I was doing, challenge them to Mario Kart or Street Fighter, absolutely whoop their ass, and they would walk away in shame.
And as they should.
I would be as smug as fuck.
So
yeah, 8-year-old little boy, you're not as good as you thought.
Fuck you! Cry to mama.
Now get out!
Get out! Cry to mama. But yeah, Mario Kart had. I also had a battle mode, didn't it?
It did, yes.
You had little balloons.
The balloons, wasn't it? Yeah,
that's right. And you'd go around and you'd fire stuff at your opponents.
There was essentially health, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's right.
You had three balloons.
When that was launched, there was reports in magazines that kids would write in saying it was making them sick because of the way it was spinning around much, because of the way that. So that was an interesting little factoid there. Bit of a weird one. It also had like a time trial mode.
You imagine the amount of 3D games we've got now. And
Yeah, it's stupid, mate. Stupid.
Crazy.
Great game. Loved it. Played a ton of it. Super Mario Kart.
Amazing picture.
Thank you.
My number 2 is what I consider to be the perfect package to go with the console. It wasn't with mine, but every Super Nintendo person should own this, and it is the Super Mario All-Stars. It's essentially 4 games in one cartridge. Exactly. Your Super Mario 1, 2, and 3 on the SNES, fully remastered in 16-bit, gorgeous colours, revamped soundtrack for the extra sound bites on a Super Nintendo console, as well as what you mentioned, Wayne, on the NES episode, where it has the Lost Levels game, which was essentially meant to be Mario 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was meant to be Super Mario Bros. 2, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So how can you not have all of that in one and not enjoy it? You have save files for your games as well, so again, you didn't have to go through each and every one by one. I assume it's the same thing with the battery in the back of it. They've done it and whatnot. But what a great, starter. Like if someone bought like a Super Nintendo later in life, later in the life of it, this is what it should come with as a starter package. When you think of Super Nintendo, or you think Nintendo full stop, it's Mario, isn't it? Straight off, it's the mascot, isn't it?
Of Mario,
the whole of it right there in front of you. Yeah. Obviously, it didn't come with Super Mario World. That was obviously the first exclusive for the console. But as for me, reliving those games all over again, especially Super Mario Bros. 3 in Super Nintendo graphics, fucking legendary, mate. Just absolutely brilliant. Just to relive that all over again. And then fully playing the Lost Levels for the first time, I can now see why it was never Super Mario 2, because that is a fucking hard son of a bitch.
It's so hard.
Ridiculously hard. So they made the right move in changing it with the story you said about
Doki Doki Panic.
That's it, yeah. But I can't deny this should be in well, if not in your top 5, at least your top 10. It is a great package for any Mario or soon to be Mario fan. My daughter plays it now as well. She's on Mario 2 at the moment, I believe. I can't see her trying Lost Levels. Let's put it that way. It's quite funny to watch. Hey, look at you loser!
It's great to see that in a whole package because, like you see, you get to see the evolution of Mario, and then you get to see how weird Super Mario 2 looks in between in the 3 design. And
Exactly,
that's a fucking weird game, but they're all amazing. And it's a phenomenal.
Absolutely. I mean, just seeing Super Mario 1 redone in 16-bit is gorgeous to look at.
It looks so much better.
And they could have just put all 3 originals on there and just, sell it as that. People would still buy it regardless. But the fact that they actually took time and effort to remaster all 3 of them, it's just, good on Nintendo for doing that, personally.
Changed the whole colour palette.
Exactly,
because there's like 3 times the colours available on the sets, maybe more. It looks infinitely better. Yeah, great pick. Yeah, it's a good one.
So Super Mario All-Stars, my number 2. Howard, what is your button masher?
Button masher is Super Metroid.
Metroid. I thought this would be your number 1.
Oh, really?
Of all time.
Oh, okay. Super Metroid. Well, yeah, I'm a big Metroid fan, as we probably learned from the last podcast.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, just to be able to play this in 16 bit.
So was it a new game, or did they remaster the first one?
No, it's a new game.
It is a new game entirely. It was like the sequel, was it?
I think the story goes, because it's been a very long time since I played it, that Samus has collected all of the Metroids, destroyed Mother Brain, and then there was this extra Metroid that she needed to go and collect. Essentially, it's the same story.
Right.
So you go on a hunt for this Metroid, but it just upscaled to bollocks, and I loved it. It was great. I love the character of Samus Aran anyway. I think we previously discussed, didn't we?
But in 16-bit now.
16-bit,
and it's super.
What more do you want? First example really of the female protagonist, underneath this super suit. But the same mechanics are there. I can't talk about it to great lengths because it's been a very long time since I played it. But it was one of those games where night after night after night after night, I'd cycle through these games and Super Metroid was there.
Can I just ask, because Super Metroid came in a massive box. Do
you
you or Wayne, do you know why it was in that super huge box?
I never had Super Metroid, Ben.
No?
I have no idea.
No, it was just a big box.
Really? That's it?
I don't recall anything else coming with it. I mean, unless I Google it now.
I don't know. Because it's crazy.
But Super Metroid, obviously,
it was near enough the size of your board game anyway, really, wasn't it? So
the Metroidvania type game, right? That whole game design is amazing, and where you have elements of the game locked away behind basically items that you collect. So it's kind of like an open world, but it gives you teasers of what's to come.
Yeah.
This is actually, in order to go here, you need to fight this boss and get his power or whatever, and then go there, which is amazing. I still like that game design. It's a great little
100%, mate. Yeah, absolutely.
It's an awesome
Metroid. And it's interesting that there is a Castlevania and a Metroid on these lists, because that is timeless.
It's a classic. And Link to the Past did the same thing. It's still that type of design.
Yeah.
Great choice. Yeah, love that.
So I'm currently trying to look up why this box was so uber.
Do you want me to look why you picked your...
I don't know. I don't know why it was so big.
This is great.
That's what she said. What's your actual pick, man? I'll have a look.
Again. Donkey Kong Country.
Donkey Kong Country.
Nice.
Great pick.
Yeah. I love Donkey Kong. I think he's a fantastic character, and it's interesting what Wayne said about the developers just having free reign to essentially create this new world for Donkey Kong that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they did, because now everything we now know about Donkey Kong was kind of based on the lore of this game.
100% it was, yeah. It turned him into a protagonist.
They did, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And if Nintendo had tightened the reins on that, we wouldn't have this fantastic little universe, this Donkey Kong universe that we do. Some of the things I was going to talk about was about the soundtrack.
So good.
I adore that soundtrack.
Yes. Yeah.
And the CD, the aforementioned CD that came with the box, was one of those CDs that I played to death. So I would smash the game out and then listen to the CD.
Oh, the kids.
Nice. Like the sad little loser that I was.
I love that, man.
I think,
Not at all, mate.
I was 15 years old at the time, and it was just one of those things. I would put my Discman on,
Yeah.
put my headphones on, and just listen to death. Wayne mentioned 9.3 million copies sold of this game.
Wow.
Third greatest selling SNES game of all time, and it had to be Donkey Kong. If it wasn't Mario, it had to be Donkey Kong.
Did you guys ever play 2 or 3 at all?
I did.
Yeah.
Played 2. Yeah, I never played 3.
I never played 3. I played,
Enjoyed 2, but no, I think 1 is the fondness is there for number 1 because of my love for the character and everything Wayne mentioned previously about the mechanics of it. So the rhino, I when you realise that you could ride these creatures. And it's
so awesome.
Yeah, especially with the ostrich, being able to just leap over. You collect the little gold versions of them.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah,
and you had to get 3 of them to get.
You had to get, in order. I think
a bonus or something.
You got 3. What did you get? Was it an extra life? I think it was.
I can't even remember.
Might be extra bananas or something. I can't remember because you had the Kong side. You had KONG.
You collected the letters
on the map somewhere, didn't you? Yeah.
As the swordfish, you swam about and you collect the letters that way. But I think it was to get an extra life, so it would level you up. But brilliant. Yeah, Rare absolutely smashed it out of the park with that one.
Yeah, I think you make a great point about if Nintendo had tighter rein on it, he may still have been a villain, or they might have said no or whatever. But the fact that they let Rare just crack on with it, a foreign studio is quite a rare thing, right? So
I see what you did there,
and it worked out very well. Yeah, great game.
And created these little side characters as well. So there was Cranky Kong at the beginning.
Cranky Kong, when he's winding the little.
I forget the name of the female Kong and
Dixie
Kong,
Dixie Kong,
and Diddy Kong.
Diddy, Cranky, and there was what was his name?
Wasn't there a surf guy?
Surfer Dude Kong. I can't remember what his name was.
I can't remember it.
Yeah,
Bro Kong, I don't know.
Bro Kong. We'll take it.
Hey, dude, you can get in my barrel. Yeah. But you jump in this thing and it would shoot you to another part of the map.
That's right, yeah.
Brilliant.
I remember when you had to time the shoot sometimes as well.
Yes, you did. Yeah. So again, it was about pattern recognition.
That's right.
They amped that up, and I got so good at this game.
It's a great game, mate. It's phenomenal platformer.
The minecart chase. The fucking frustration.
So hard. It's so difficult.
God, I learned to swear, I think.
Yes, mate.
But Donkey Kong Country.
Nice. Just going back to Super Metroid. Super Metroid was originally planned to be released in a standard box, but after the game was delayed, Nintendo decided to release the large box with a 72-page guide as a way of saying sorry.
Yes, the guide. It was, the super big guide. Yeah, bizarre.
Nice.
How bizarre.
Bizarre.
Right, let's do it. The final ones.
Number 1. It's number 1.
Games Master, what is the favourite Super Nintendo game of all time?
Super Mario World, baby! 1991 release in Europe, 1990 in Japan. It was a launch title. Phenomenal. And what a launch title, mate.
Yeah,
what a launch title. Incredible game. So I'll talk a little bit about my history with it. Again, I got it later because our launch title, our pack-in title was Donkey Kong Country, so we got Super Mario World a little bit later. It might have been like a double header, so we might have got it, but we played that afterwards. Anyway, irregardless, just wonderful. Super Mario Brothers was one of my favourite games ever from the NES, one of my formational gaming experiences, and Super Mario World just took that to the nth degree. It is, I think, the perfection of the platforming genre, or as how Nintendo calls them, athletic style games, right? Athletic games. Yeah, so that's what Nintendo calls them, athletic games. So
make it sound like track and field or something.
Yeah, right. It's just a beautiful thing. Everything about it, the color palette is phenomenal. All of the giant sprites, the enemies are so imaginative and creative. Like a little American football dude and like a giant Bullet Bill. And
I remember him. Yeah, the fucking big guy, wasn't he? Yeah.
Just amazing characters, and this was the introduction of Yoshi.
Yes, exactly.
To the franchise, which is a phenomenal thing as well. And I've got a little history around that, which I'll talk about. But just in terms of my feeling behind it, that blew me away. So many secrets in that game as well. Like lots of different exits. And you had the world map that you would go around. And there were secrets in the world map. That blew my little mind, mate. I mean, in phenomenal, like 11, 12-year-old me was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. I mean, the perfect game. It was so much fun. And I think that's really how I'd encapsulate Super Mario World. It's like it's fun boiled down. Like you can't not enjoy that game. It has that classic Nintendo design, right, where you start the game and you learn everything about the game in the first level of the game, like we talked about with Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
right? That's the same thing in Super Mario World. It introduces you piecemeal to these different mechanisms, and it's just magic how it's done. It's like an absolute masterpiece. Koji Kondo again brought back in for the music. Everyone knows those themes. It has this weird tropical reggae vibe. All of the soundtrack, do 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 do, like weirdly upbeat. And that is like a weird leitmotif. You hear it in like underground sections in a minor key, and it's really sinister. It's like a do 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 do. It's fucking weird. Like how you use it in different ways. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, so let's do a little bit of history around it. Miyamoto, obviously the legendary designer, had his hands all over this one, ruled that one with an iron fist, unlike Donkey Kong Country. And his team was given a super tight deadline to bring this out for launch. And basically, at the time that they were asked to develop it, the Super Nintendo hardware hadn't been finalized. So they were like working on shit that just wasn't actually finished yet. Which is, can you imagine the stress of that?
I bet.
I mean, it's terrifying. So there was a number of things that were still being developed, like the Mode 7 scrolling and things like that, and different colors that they could use. As a hardware experiment, before even developing it properly, they just ported Super Mario Bros. 3 to the Super Nintendo technology to see what it would be like, and then they would use that. Well, the idea was to use that as a basis for Super Mario. That
makes
4.
a lot of sense now,
right?
Especially with the map, picking levels and stuff as well. Yeah,
exactly. So that's what they did at first. They went, okay, let's use this as a framework, and we're going to build off this and make a new one. I don't know how long through, but at some point during that development, all of the team were like, that's too similar to Super Mario Bros. 3. It's exactly the same game. So they scrapped everything and started from scratch. And then they used some of the elements from there, which is why you have a world map. But if you look at some development pictures of the original Super Mario World development, it basically looks exactly like Super Mario Bros. 3. So they started by porting it and then changed it again. So they did something totally new. On Yoshi, interestingly enough, Miyamoto wanted to include him in the original Super Mario Brothers.
Really?
But the NES couldn't handle it. So
I'm kind of glad they saved it then.
So he wanted to have a dinosaur companion ever since then, but the engineers couldn't do it due to the limitations of the NES, basically.
Could you imagine what he looked like on an 8-bit console? God.
Yeah, it would have been like just 4 green squares. But the inspiration for it can actually be traced back further. Miyamoto designed a green dragon for the 1984 game Devil World, which looks basically the same as Yoshi. And this is 1984 he came up with this idea.
Wow.
So he's been sitting on this for like 9 years or 8 years going, now dinosaur companion, let's go. Which is amazing. When it was launched or previewed before it was even released, it was previewed, I think, a year and a half, maybe 2 years before it's released. The reaction was quite muted. And one of the things that caused that muted reaction was because it was based on that Super Mario Bros. 3 framework before they scrapped it and started again. But then Nintendo had to announce that they were delaying the launch of their console by a whole year, which gave them an extra year of development. And then when they previewed it a second time, people lost their shit because it looked completely different. It had all of the secret levels and paths. It had that whole dynamic map where you get keys and open different exits from the different game during the game. They completely, essentially redesigned and built the game in that 1 year extra development time, which was basically essential for making the game what it was. If it had launched at its projected launch time, we would have had a different Super Mario World. It would have been very similar to Super Mario Bros. 3. it wouldn't have had half the features that we know
Wow.
from Super Mario World, which is amazing, including things like the multiple
So it
exits
turned
and
out for
different
the
paths.
better, really.
Definitely. The delay gave the team so much more time, improved everything around it. It's amazing, really. You see the pictures and stuff when you read about that. Amazing. Other little things about the game. You know those dotted line blocks that you had during the game, right?
Yes.
And you could go to the line palaces, hit a button and like make the paths easier or whatever. That was done because a lot of games at the time had like easy, medium and hard modes, right? You remember that. Select it and then you go in your mode and you go. They proposed that for a Mario game, but Miyamoto said no. He wanted everyone to be able to play the game, right? Regardless. And he wants everyone to play it in whatever way that they want. So we'll give them lots of options. Those dotted line things and the palaces that turn those different paths on and off was essentially a way of dynamically changing the difficulty. Miyamoto's theory was if you wanted a hard game, you ignored those. If you wanted an easier game, you go out your way, turn the palaces on, and it makes the later levels easier because it turns those additional extra paths to make the level easier. Because you can complete the level either way, just one is harder than the other. So
Wow.
that's basically it. Was Miyamoto's approach to accessibility.
That's
in
the
games.
Yeah, I was going to
Genius
say.
move, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely
100%.
genius, mate. So there's no difficulty because he doesn't need it. The difficulty is dynamic. You play it how you want to play, which is a phenomenal thing, really. The man is a genius. Yeah. The game was so linked to the launch of the platform that those 4 colours that I'm pointing at on the SNES are all throughout the game. The 4 different types of Koopa Trooper, blue, green, yellow and red. The 4 different types of the four different types of Yoshi, blue, green, yellow and red.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's dotted all the way through the game as a little like Easter egg. So it's linked to the Super Nintendo in its like entirety. Absolute Mario mania this caused.
Yeah.
I mean, it was freaking everywhere. You could get Mario mac and cheese. You could get Mario Coke, Mario fucking McDonald's toys. It was all over the place. So this thing was an absolute revolution. And despite being one of the greatest games ever made, in my estimation, I think quite a lot of people's estimations, literally one of the greatest games ever made, possibly the greatest platform ever made, Miyamoto felt like it was incomplete. And he didn't like that. Even with the extra development time, he wanted more time to make an even better game. And can you even imagine that?
I can't. I mean, it's a perfect game regardless, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, I think
it'd be a totally different game if you had more time again, like you mentioned, isn't it? So
Yeah, and I loved the hell out of that game. I bled my fingers playing it. And that's my number 1, Super Mario World.
absolutely amazing Pixar.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It was going to be in mine, but because I already had All Stars, I thought I'll put that in there instead. But a fantastic Pixar and a fantastic game. I love the soundtrack to that game. I also love the whole aspect of using the background. There's levels where he can climb on fences and swing between different fences and stuff.
Phenomenal,
Or turn it in, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. And again, we talked about Mode 7 a lot in this episode, but it was such a foundational bit of the technology where you had lots of things that would scale and get bigger or rotate.
That's right.
And that made the levels really dynamic, like really fantastic. And yeah, like things like Mario scaling fences and getting the cape and flying through the level, which was an amazing thing.
Do you remember the first time you saw Bowser and he's on that balloon and it kind of goes up and he zooms right into the screen? It was
that's
fucking
amazing.
legendary, right?
It's incredible. Yeah, and as well, you could save items for use later, which you couldn't do before. So you'd have a little item in the top of the screen, you press select and it would float down. Yeah, exactly. Or if you got hit, it would come down.
Yeah.
It was the first game in the series to introduce checkpoints halfway through the levels.
right, yeah.
So you'd hit a checkpoint, and if you were small, you'd go big again. So it was a little leveler, and so you're halfway through. If you died, you go back to there. Great, and this game was a lot of innovations. I think they really perfected the whole platforming approach with this game,
Definitely.
at least in the 16-bit era. Yeah,
You're
and
right.
of course, the biggest selling game for the Super Nintendo.
Is it the biggest one?
20 plus million units, and it is not even close. Partly it's because it was a pack-in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the biggest selling game that wasn't a pack-in was actually Street Fighter 2.
Okay.
But the biggest game that full stop is Super Mario Brothers. If it wasn't a pack-in, it would probably still be the biggest game, I think. But yeah, great game.
Based on those numbers. And we talk about perfect movies. You're right. This was a perfect game.
Yeah, perfect platformer, mate. Great game. My number 1.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very good pick, sir. My number 1 is already been mentioned by yourself and Howard. Mine is the original Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, the original, the World Warriors.
The original, because that was the one that came with my Nintendo, my Super Nintendo. before this game had come out, I had played the shit out of the arcades. I'd had the chance to play it at my dad's work, as well as it used to be the old bowling alley in Crawley years ago, whatnot. And I used to, get blisters on my thumbs, my fingers, learning every single move for every character. Ryu's fireball, Hadoukens, hurricane kicks, Blanca's electricity. Yeah, the 100 hand slap that Honda does is simply just tapping this and that. I absolutely lived and breathed Street Fighter 2. That was the reason why I wanted a Super Nintendo, was for that game. And like you said, Wayne, earlier on, that it was more exclusive to Nintendo at the time until Sega got its grubby hands on it a couple of years later. That was the way to play it, and it was arcade perfect in my opinion for a small console as well. And then obviously Turbo came out, and then my original pick was going to be Super Street Fighter 2, because I had... Did you ever remember that opening of Super Street Fighter 2 when, Ryu's doing the stance in the shadows, and all of a sudden he pulls his hand back and does the Hadouken straight to the camera? That was one of the first images where I just that is Street Fighter. Because I just seen the anime movie just before then as well. Nice. So that was that on your console, and pow, straight. Again, it's burnt into my brain, that just whole image of seeing that Super Street Fighter 2 arcade, and then it was coming out on the Super Nintendo. Again, another reason to have it was to play it on the 6-button one, because if you play it on the Mega Drive, you have to constantly press start to change buttons, unless you bought the 6-button one. So then, this is another reason why this controller is phenomenal for fighting games. Yep. But again, if it wasn't for normal Street Fighter, I would not be the fan of fighting games to live on and play other fighting games. Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Battle Arena Toshinden, everything. I have played so many fighting games since I played Street Fighter on the Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo was one of the reasons why I got into fighting games, and it has to be my number one. I don't play fighting games as much now. Unfortunately, you don't play them as many people now, but I can't deny that Street Fighter game was fucking huge when it came out.
Yes, mate. Amazing game.
I had posters for it everywhere. I had people telling me how to defeat, certain people had certain weaknesses, how to do certain moves for certain characters. Like Zangief was the hardest one ever to do, still is. And
spinning pile driver.
Yeah.
Real hard.
And the thing is that the fact Capcom are amazing with this, because they have kept their moveset since Street Fighter 2. Every other they might have introduced a couple of extra moves for their characters, but every other basic move since Street Fighter 2 is still on Street Fighter 6 now, for example. Absolutely phenomenal. And again, that's great for the hardcore fans of the franchise. It's not my favourite fighting franchise of all time, but I can't deny it's what got me into fighting games.
It basically coined the phrase of my lists for tonight.
Yeah.
Button mash.
I mean, I used to buy... There used to be Nintendo. There was a copy of Nintendo Magazine. I don't know if anyone remembers it, but it had a video on it, and it would teach you all the moves of how to do the Street Fighter games. It was literally a 15-minute VHS that came with it, and it's like,
what the
these
fuck?
guys? Oh, this is how you do Vega's, climb on the cage. Remember, we used to do that, and then all that sort of stuff, and it's just. That's amazing, man. I wish you could do shit like that nowadays, but come on.
Do you own said VHS?
No, I don't know anymore. No.
It would be worth.
That's the issue. But the cover it used to come with is just this amazing piece of Street Fighter art. But yeah,
great number one, mate.
Number one,
great number one.
Howards, bring it home, sir.
Well,
what's the button mash?
The button mash, Super Mario World.
Hey! Oh,
Super Mario World. I can't add anything to Wayne's.
Yeah, that was there. That description was phenomenal, Wayne. Absolutely amazing.
Made me cry.
Oh, yeah.
The journey to Dinosaur Land. So I think the original story was that after resolving the events of Super Mario 3, Mario and his club, his gang, his posse ventured to Dinosaur Land, find Yoshi and
on a beach. Right? Yeah, I think that's the story. They're on a beach, but then Bowser takes Peach from him.
Yeah, because he's a sod. Yeah,
sod, mate,
just can't help
It's always
himself.
taking her.
He is. Just get over it, mate.
Move on already.
Yeah, move on. Super Mario World. So that's my button mash. I won't bore you with anything about that one. Well, my absolute legend is Super Mario Kart.
Super Mario Kart, baby! What a game! Love it.
Like you say, fourth best-selling Super Nintendo game of all time. 4 racing cups, 20 tracks, 50 cc's, 100 cc's, and 150 cc's.
That's it, the
levels.
CCs.
CCs, that was the difficulty, wasn't it?
I was always, because I am Donkey Kong to my core. I was always DK.
He's my bro.
He is my bro. But like I said earlier, you learn to play other characters because otherwise it would be as boring as fuck. Super Mario Kart. I don't know what to say really that can put on top of
He's
everything.
still undefeatable, folks. Someone challenge him.
I liked that in Super Mario Kart, the original one, you had your screen that you'd play on, and then underneath you'd have like a top-down view of the track, right? So it was split screen, even if you were playing single player, which is quite unusual. So the bottom half of the screen would be like a full map, so you'd see who was first, who was last, etc., etc. It was really, really cool. But I think it's an amazing pick, mate. It was a revolutionary.
But for a game that nearly wasn't, I mean, there's so many elements of it. You just think, wow. I mean, they went all out to produce this game for what was essentially an accident. And yeah.
It's incredible.
Blown away by it.
And the fact that it just doesn't, it became this massive beast of the thing.
Damn
Amazing.
Rainbow Road.
Mate, what's
To wake up
the
and
fact
With the no edges Rainbow Road, you keep sliding off of.
The fact they didn't put any edges on it.
No, I know. I mean,
Oh my god, so difficult.
masochists.
Yeah, so difficult, mate. Great pick, man. Love that game.
Sorry, going back to Street Fighter, who was your favourite character?
My favorite is Ryu, for sure.
Guile.
Is Guile, okay.
Guile, mate.
So you mentioned about you being really good at Mario Kart. Undefeatable, you say?
Let's see.
Okay.
Let's see.
So
I'm not gonna all of a sudden shy away. I'm gonna say
He's going back on his word now.
No, not at all. No, let's see. It's been a while, but
okay.
yeah.
Who's your character? Are you Donkey Kong? Who's your character on Mario Kart?
I don't know Mario Kart,
If I went heavyweight, it would be Donkey Kong. If I went lightweight, I would pick Toad.
Yeah, nice.
See, Ken's mine on Street Fighter,
Okay.
and I'm not going to lie, I am undefeatable with that character.
Okay.
Really?
So
That's like me on Tekken
someone
3
needs to
with
challenge me. Yeah.
Paul Phoenix, mate. Unfucking undefeated.
yeah, exactly.
Undefeated.
And I've tried that with him as well. He fucking hell, man, that guy. Honourable mentions then. Do we have any? You said you had a list.
I have.
Wayne, please give us that list.
Bunch. I'll try and race through these, but one of them, Super Bomberman 1993 by
Nice,
Hudson
that was an
Soft.
honourable mention for me.
Yeah, it was basically a push the 4-person multiplayer gaming into the forefront, really, which is incredible. Phenomenal. They developed the super multi-tap accessory for it, which allowed
I was going to ask, did they do that in the end?
They
Because I
did.
swear I saw that
Hudson
before.
developed the super multi-tap accessory to expand the 2 ports to 4 ports, which allowed you to have 4 players playing that game. First time you could do that.
Could you use it on Mario Kart?
I don't know.
No.
I don't think you could, because I think it wasn't developed with that in mind.
Okay.
Another one, I don't know if anyone knows it here, but it was Uni Rally, otherwise known as Uni Racers. Developed in 1994 by DMA Design. It's when Nintendo, once upon a time, was almost sued by Pixar. And that's because of this game, interestingly enough. Before even Toy Story put Pixar on the map, it was to do with these little computer-generated unicycles, and you'd race them on these tracks. It had the most amazing stunt system. You'd be hammering, like racing, again, 2-player racing, side-scrolling, phenomenal. I mean, I urge you to look out, watch a little video of it if you can. Yeah, Uni Rally. Racer, great looping courses. It's phenomenal. Brilliant. Another one, Total Carnage. I've got to mention that because my brother will kill me if I don't. We played so much Total Carnage. Did anyone play Super Smash TV or Smash TV?
Yes, I love Smash TV.
Same developers.
Okay.
Right, same developers, which was Midway, also famous for Mortal Kombat.
Yep.
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
so there was that. This was great. It was like a top-down shoot 'em up, but you're like 2 generals running around maps shooting in lots of different directions. Like, absolutely amazing. Set in the fictional country of Kukistan. Players assumed the role of Captain Carnage and Major Mayhem from the Doomsday Squad in a last-ditch effort to overthrow Director General Akboob and his army of mutants from conquering the world.
Also,
Akboob. Yeah, phenomenal. So, yeah, it's amazing. It was made by most of the same team who did the Smash TV series. And it's very much like that, top-down, shoot 'em up, etc. Another honourable mention, F-Zero.
Nice.
1991. I have to mention that as well.
Yeah,
and I'll quickly race through a couple more and I'll let you hand it over. Super Punch Out didn't go on the list because I talked so much.
Punch-Out!
Did you forget Super Punch-Out?
Yeah.
Super Punch-Out I enjoyed more than Punch-Out, but I didn't put it on this because I talked a lot about Punch-Out in the first one. And it's kind of the same game, I'll be honest with you.
It is, yeah. Good shout.
But Yoshi's Island, another one. And
I was going to
much-
mention that, yeah.
Much, much later for me, which was actually after I owned it. So it was like after I got a PlayStation, was Super Mario RPG, which wasn't available for us
yes,
at the time.
Yes.
So I went back to play that after I found out about it, and that was an absolutely phenomenal game. Those are my honourable mentions.
Wow. Howard?
Well,
Wow. I love that. Wow.
we have Adam's Family Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt.
Nice.
Mate, that's an obscure pick. I like it.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I know. I'm not a particularly big fan of Adam's Family, but it's a bit like Fester's Quest. It was for some reason I'm not a fan of it. In particular, I never watched the TV program, but these games were just so fun. And yeah, just to play this silly little.
They had a platform for like everything.
They did. They did. But yeah, that was great. Aladdin. So one of the rare Disney.
Oh, the SNES version.
The SNES version of Aladdin.
By
Yeah.
Capcom.
Yeah, and it was great because it was like they'd literally taken the art from the film and just thrown it out there on this computer screen. And yeah, I countless hours playing that one. That was great. Alien 3, shit film.
The game's good though.
Good game.
It's a good movie as well. By the way.
Yeah, of course. So Animaniacs.
Yeah.
Batman Returns.
Yes, as I mentioned for me.
that's
Yeah.
very good, yeah.
Battletoads in Battlemaniacs.
Battletoads. Oh shit! There was.
They done one with Double Dragon, didn't they?
Battletoads versus Double Dragon.
There you go. Yeah.
I did, yeah.
I think one of
It's a memory coming.
One of the programmers from Battletoads, I think, went on to work with some of the programming for Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you think back, there might be some visual similarities in terms of how it looks. I'm going to have a look at some point, but I think that's a thing. Internet, correct me, but yeah, carry on.
Oh, they probably will. Chrono Trigger.
Great game.
Chrono Trigger, yeah.
Incredible game.
I think if you look at polls, it's probably listed as one of the top 10, if not the top 5 best games.
Things like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI would be on my list, but I didn't get to those until much later.
No, and it's exactly the reason that it's not on one of my lists. It's because I just didn't play it.
Yeah, it was post me owning it. Do you know what I mean?
I can't deny it's a great game, but I just didn't play it enough to put it on the list. Earthworm Jim.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, for sure.
Final Fantasy 4.
Actual Final Fantasy IV?
Actual Final Fantasy 4.
Great game.
So you talk about 7, but yeah, 4 is where it started. I think it's really it took off. From
Wasn't
4.
there a mixture like 6 was 3 or
6 was
something?
3 in the
Yeah.
US.
Oh yeah, they got it
Yeah.
a bit mixed up depending on which territory you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Killer Instinct. So
Killer
we talk
Instinct,
about other.
Ultra Combo!
I love that game.
One of the best like shout outs in
it
video game history.
It had to be Street Fighter, but I love Killer Instinct.
Killer Instinct's awesome.
Absolutely loved it, and what a banging soundtrack.
Yes, as well.
Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past.
Link to the Past, great game.
Lemmings, just standard Lemmings. Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time.
Yeah, nice.
Super WrestleMania. There's always a wrestling game. But yeah, I know.
It's a
mate.
fucking good game.
This Super WrestleMania was amazing,
Yeah.
by the way. It's a fucking great wrestling game.
T2 arcade game.
Oh,
Mario Paint, which was
yes, with the mouse, right? Yes.
yeah, which was slightly different. Mega Man X.
Yeah.
I love my hockey. So NHL '95, Pitfall: The Main Adventure,
Pitfall's
Super
wicked.
Bomberman.
Yes.
Super Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Super Star Wars, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, a lot of games on.
I would have bulked them all into the one hit, but I
Yeah.
thought no, because it started with Super Star Wars. So
Yeah.
that's why I had to do it. And that is the end of my list.
Nice.
I've only got a couple. Clay Fighter.
Clay Fighter.
Oh yeah, anyone
pretty
remember
easy,
Clay
yes,
Fighter?
mate, Clay
I
Fighter.
friggin' love that. I always used to play his Blue Suede Goo, who's like the clay version of Elvis.
Yeah,
And every time he jumped, he goes, "Oh!"
Such a stupid game. Love it.
So stupid, ridiculous. There was a shooting game, space shooting game called Axe Slayer. I don't know if everyone's ever heard of it.
No, I don't
Most
know that.
of them are from the side, aren't they? And they shoot. This was like going upwards, and you get these brilliant 3D graphics for the time, for the big boss and stuff. Fucking awesome. And last one, which, because everyone else mentioned it, Zombie Ate My Neighbours.
Oh, yes.
Anyone ever play
We
that?
talked about that, didn't
Yeah,
we?
did we talk about it? I can't remember,
we
yeah.
talked about it, I think, on the NES episode.
But and then obviously Killer Instinct, you've obviously made. Oh, I fucking love that game.
awesome
Just-
game.
It's amazing. Because it moved it on. So you've got Street Fighter and then you've got Mortal Kombat, but you've got Killer
And how do we
Instinct.
do it? And it's literally what Wayne said about the glitch that created combos. And that's
now
where...
combos.
And there we go. Yeah,
we have
you
actual
create games
combos.
like
Exactly,
that.
but
Yeah.
did you ever do it? I can't do combos for shit in that game.
No, can't.
It's
No,
terrible.
No. So this is why I've used the term button mashing. So it started with Street Fighter, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, you all you can do is just mash those buttons, and hope for the best.
Maybe
if
something
you
will
get a
happen.
combo, great. If you win, even better.
And
one
that's it.
more that comes to mind, which I didn't add in my I have short-circuited Super R-Type.
Oh,
which
yes.
I very much
Yeah.
enjoyed.
Yeah.
But it was I never completed it. It was too fucking hard. Yeah, those are all of the things. And have we got time for just a couple more factoids?
Please.
So, a little bit. SNES had a 15-year run. Came out in 1990.
15 years.
Stopped manufacturing in 2005.
No way.
Yeah.
Get out.
Do you want to guess the last market that they were manufacturing and distributing in?
God, Peru.
That was out the same time as the N64. That's
It
ridiculous.
was. I was just about to say, yeah.
You wanna guess
No
the market?
idea, man. No, go on.
The United Kingdom.
Was it really?
We were the final market that they were still distributing in. Actual.
I was going to say Japan, personally, but...
New SNES consoles was this one. It was discontinued in 1998 in the EU and 2003 in Japan. But we loved it for a full 2 years after they stopped distributing new consoles in Japan, which is absolutely wild to think about.
That is.
15-year run, mate. It sold 49 million units worldwide, which is staggering. I mean, it was the best-selling console of its generation by a long distance. You talked about the number of games, and it came a little bit later in its in the generation cycle.
Yeah.
But this really interested me about the development of it and its launch. The launch in Japan was so popular. The original shipment was 300,000 SNESes. They sold out in like 3 hours or something. It was like literally hours. They were like pre-sale sales, which were gone before they even got there. It caused a policy change in the Japanese government, who after that, because of all of the social disturbance and the chaos that it caused, asked all future consoles from that point onwards to only be launched on weekends.
Wow.
It was that wild. It was so successful, it attracted the attention of the Yakuza, who were stealing shipments.
Fucking hell.
Well, if you can monetize it.
They were literally stealing boxes of them en route to distribution.
They're the original
centres.
scalpers.
Yes, mate. So Nintendo had to move these at night at weird hours to stop them getting robbed.
That's insane.
That is the last little bit for you.
Oh, God, I can't believe the accuser got into it.
On that bombshell.
That's crazy. But no, thank you guys for doing that. I don't think there was only a couple of clashes apart from that.
Oh,
I think it
yeah,
was pretty
but
good.
We had a couple of high-level ones, but that's it.
But do you know what? It didn't matter.
Doesn't matter, mate.
Yeah.
We all got our bit in and whatnot. And again, thank you, Mr. Encyclopedia, for that whole...
So, in preparation for this, I thought, no, I'm not going to bother. Because there's absolutely no way. I don't know enough about gaming in general to be able to top that.
I literally put 2 facts: the release date and the amount of games. That was it. I knew Wayne was just going to do the rest. I thought,
yeah, exactly.
There's no point.
Yeah.
Created a rod for my own back, haven't I?
Well,
that's it, mate.
Yeah, but look, we've had fun. We've enjoyed it.
I love it, mate.
Yeah.
I love it. And yeah, I like to contribute. Here I am.
Thank you, mate.
Contributing verbal diarrhea for y'all.
And thank you, Hal, for the 2 lists as well.
Oh, a pleasure. A bit tenuous tonight, but I'll try harder.
No, mate,
It's
it was
a great
nothing.
one.
I loved it, mate. Honourable mentions are amazing as well. So let's end it there, guys. If you like what you listen to, follow us on Facebook at the M.T.V.B Podcast, or on Instagram at M.T.V.B Podcast, or on TikTok, M.T.V.B Podcast 197. I be Atman, joined by...
H, the man with 2 lists.
I'm Wayne from Bored Stupid. Find us anywhere you can find your favourite podcast.
Thank you very much, guys. And thank you for listening, guys. Good night.